Guys, if you like the story, don't forget to support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Chapter 76, Yakuza becoming video game developers. Kishin main headquarters. Just one day after Kishin launched its program to assist programmers in becoming video game developers, numerous programmers had already flocked to Kishin headquarters, eager to request the Kishin development kits. Inside Kishin's building waiting room, a multitude of programmers were already seated, not because they sought to apply to Kishin, but to enroll in the Kishin program for independent video game developers. I've always harbored a desire to create my own video game, but I never had the chance. Thankfully, Kishin is willing to provide hardware documentation and development kits. This will be a tremendous help, one of the programmers remarked with a smile. That's so true. I've often felt frustrated with Tora's video games and have constantly dreamt of making my own, another programmer chimed in. Hehe, what can you expect from Tora? All they ever do is follow in Kishin's footsteps and refuse to take risks by creating their own original games, another programmer added. Kishin's new programs became a hot topic among the residents of Tokyo and its neighboring cities. As Kishin expanded, it established branches not only in the Toshima ward but also in other cities, thus enhancing brand recognition and reducing costs through a local presence. This strategic move aimed to improve customer service and increase flexibility and agility, since these branches possessed the autonomy to make decisions and take actions without awaiting approval from the main headquarters. For this reason, many programmers unable to visit the main headquarters in the Toshima ward began visiting other Kishin branches. Due to Kishin's actions, Tora and Suzuki were quite taken aback. However, this time, they refrained from imitating Kishin. Instead, they awaited Kishin's potential failure. After all, one of the reasons the video game industry had faltered was the influx of subpar video games from independent developers, overshadowing the few gems. They couldn't comprehend why Kishin had made this move when they were undeniably profiting immensely from their video games, such as Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, among many others. In fact, Kishin was even capitalizing on these video game characters by selling them as stuffed toys and action figures. Even major broadcasting channels were reporting on Kishin's quest to recruit programmers to become independent game developers. One major broadcasting channel continued with skepticism. Has Kishin not learned from the past? Have they not heeded the lesson of the video game industry pioneer, Atari, which allowed independent video game developers onto their system, ultimately contributing to their downfall? Another station added, could this be the downfall of Kishin's rapid ascent? Allowing inexperienced programmers to create their own video games. Meanwhile, there were more balanced opinions expressed by other stations. Even if Kishin tightens its requirements, permitting only video games meeting their standards to enter the market and be played on their Famicom, it remains a risky endeavor. The untested nature of these games and the public's perception of independent video games not created by their beloved Kishin raise questions. Will it thrive, or could this mark the decline of the rising star, Kishin? Many people engaged in discussions on this topic, leading to heated debates. While some speculated that this might spell the end of Kishin's ascent, others believed it could be the catalyst for further growth. Tora trademark VG Entertainment. In just a matter of days, Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio successfully persuaded numerous programmers to join them in developing independent video games, liberating them from Tora's demanding expectations that pushed for games to surpass Kishin's. Even though achieving it in such a short time seemed implausible. 12 of the programmers agreed to join them, while the remaining 14 chose to remain with Tora Company. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio empathized with their decision, understanding the multitude of uncertainties at play. In a bold move, Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio, along with the 12 programmers, collectively resigned from Tora Company, leaving the higher UPS stunned by the sudden departure of so many of their programmers. Following their mass exodus from Tora Company. Tora Conference Room. What's the meaning of this? Why did 14 of our programmers leave? One executive exclaimed, clearly bewildered. Many in the room exchanged incredulous glances, finding the executive's question rather self-evident. The departure was a clear sign of dissatisfaction with the company. President Taro Ikeda, though appearing fatigued, remained composed. It doesn't matter. The news has already reached the chairman, and he has assured us that replacements will be introduced for those vacant positions, President Taro Ikeda stated emotionlessly. The bewildered executive awkwardly scratched the back of his head, acutely aware of the judgmental gazes from his colleagues. The chairman involving himself in such a trivial matter? That's quite unusual, remarked one of the executives thoughtfully. President Taro Ikeda directed a dispassionate gaze at the executive who had spoken and replied, "That is not your concern. Do not question the chairman's decisions." Shitai Chikafuji, a Kumiko of the Yamauchi family, had been closely monitoring the video game industry for a considerable time. In fact, he had established connections with Tora Corporation. He had held meetings with Asahi Tanaka, the chairman of Tora Corporation, who had requested his assistance in investigating the former vice-chairman, Jin, who had already been convicted. Shitai had always harbored a keen interest in the video game industry, which led him to aid Asahi Tanaka. He had occasionally discussed his interests with the chairman of Tora Corporation, Asahi Tanaka. Furthermore, Shitai even had some programmers within the Yamauchi family who expressed an interest in joining Tora, but Chairman Asahi Tanaka had advised him to exercise patience. In fact, the Yamauchi family also had lawyers within its ranks. Diverse professions within Yakuza families were nothing out of the ordinary. Shitai Chikafuji was determined to empower his people to create their own video games, fueled by his growing frustration with Tora's video games. Although he found a flicker of interest in a somewhat darker game called Odyssey of Nurin Rage, there was little else in Tora's gaming catalog that piqued his interest, except for the exceptional Kishin video games. Just as impatience was starting to gnaw at him, an opportunity arose. Asahi Tanaka called, expressing his need for programmers in his company. With this confirmation, Shitai couldn't contain his excitement and immediately ordered his men to summon the programmers groomed by the Yamauchi family. Grinning from ear to ear, Shitai watched as the programmers under the family's influence lined up before him. "Let's show the world how we create video games!" Shitai exclaimed to the enthusiastic Yakuza programmers. Chapter 77, Incident. Location, Kyushu Island, Fukuoka Prefecture. In a particular Japanese traditional mansion, once resided the Yamada family. The Yamada family was known for its involvement in the nightlife industry, which included activities like prostitution and underground gambling. Over time, the situation of prostitution in Japan has deteriorated, leading to an increase in infidelity among husbands who go unnoticed. Many Japanese men turn to seeking pleasure or playing pachinko during stressful times, aligning with the desires of the Yamada family, as it proved to be a lucrative source of income for them. Until a week ago, everything changed. Until just a week ago, the gaming scene in Fukuoka was drastically different. Kishin video games and consoles, which were previously a hit in greater Tokyo cities, had finally become available in Fukuoka. This caused a rapid decline in the number of men seeking pleasure or spending time at pachinko parlors, as the popularity of video games took over. This shift had a significant impact on the earnings of the Yamada family. Consequently, Isa Sadao, the Seiko Koman, Wakaga Shira, of the Yamada family, made a crucial decision to sabotage the distribution trucks of Kishin Famicom and their video game cartridges. They achieved this by intercepting several Kishin trucks using Yamada family cars and a group of men. These individuals forcibly opened the truck doors, tossing Kishin Famicom and video game cartridge boxes onto the road. Some of the Yakuza members seized a Kishin Famicom and an entire box of Kishin video game cartridges, while others destroyed the consoles and games. The loss incurred by Kishin and their distributors was substantial. At Kishin headquarters, Shin received the distressing news with a heavy heart. The frightened truck drivers reported that a group of men dressed in black suits had suddenly halted several of their distribution trucks, which were carrying products such as Kishin Famicom and video game cartridges. These individuals had forcibly opened the truck doors, exposing the Kishin products in plain sight. Shockingly, they then proceeded to throw the Kishin products onto the road. Some brave onlookers, despite their fear, managed to seize Kishin products before hastily fleeing from the menacing Yakuza presence. They are truly arrogant and lawless individuals. We must report this to the authorities, exclaimed Li Han in a fit of indignation. Li Han had always believed that Japan would be different from his home country, but it seemed he was mistaken. While Japan was undoubtedly better than his homeland, where money could buy anything, it also harbored its share of lawless individuals. Myra nodded in agreement beside Shin, saying, "Yes, that's the right course of action. Let's report it immediately." Shin concurred, stating, "All right, let's cooperate with the Japanese police to investigate this matter." Shin hadn't anticipated this situation, and it was the first time such an incident had occurred in his company, aside from the occasional mishap where distribution trucks accidentally had unlocked doors, resulting in minor damage. However, the situation in Fukuoka City, where several trucks distributing Kishin products had suffered substantial losses, was vastly different. Shin shook his head helplessly, realizing that this parallel Japan was indeed unlike the Japan he had known. Asset Protection Manager Otsuka Kin initially contacted the local police in Kyushu Island, Fukuoka City, but they promptly rejected Kishin's request for an investigation. Faced with no other choice, Otsuka Kin reluctantly reached out to the Tokyo Japanese Metropolitan Police. Now, Shin could only await news regarding the situation. Chiyoda Ward, Tokyo. Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. Organized Crime Unit's Office. Tetsui Toru, the investigative superior of the Organized Crime Units, had been assigned by the commander to look into the matter reported by Kishin, which had unfolded on Kyushu Island, Fukuoka Prefecture. Upon hearing that the matter was related to Kishin, Tetsui Toru swiftly mobilized his team of detectives to establish contact with Kishin for a more thorough investigation. Upon meeting Kishin's representative, the Asset Protection Manager, Otsuka Kin, Tetsui Toru extended a hurried handshake in greeting. Tetsui Toru, with an awkward scratch of his head, ventured, "I understand this may be unrelated, but my son happens to be a fan of Kishin. He's been curious if Kishin has any plans to release new video games soon." The detectives in Tetsui Toru's team couldn't help but feel embarrassed, and they discreetly distanced themselves from their superior. Otsuka Kin chuckled wryly and replied, "Well, that's related to our company's confidentiality, so I'm afraid I can't provide any details." Tetsui Toru, though expecting the response, let out a disappointed sigh. "I see." However, Otsuka Kin reassured him with a smile, "But rest assured, while I can't divulge specific details about upcoming games, even I am not privy to such information outside our game development teams. I can confidently say that our future releases will be both unique and fascinating." Otsuka Kin smiled warmly, recognizing that this was the first time he'd encountered someone of such respectable police status showing interest in their video games. Tetsui Toru chimed in, "Indeed, Kishin never fails to deliver intriguing and distinctive video games. There's even been some discussion about whether Kishin will allow independent video game developers onto their platform." One of the detectives interjected, "Sir, our primary focus here is to investigate the sabotage of Kishin product distribution trucks by a group of individuals." Tetsui Toru, jolted from his reverie by his subordinate's reminder, nodded in acknowledgement. With a serious expression, Tetsui Toru inquired about the incident involving the distribution trucks of Kishin products, prompting Otsuka Kin to explain the situation. "So, the Fukuoka Prefectural Police Headquarters refused to investigate this matter," Tetsui Toru mused. One of the detectives speculated, perhaps the group of men have deep-rooted connections or wield significant influence in Kyushu Island, particularly Fukuoka City. Tetsui Toru shared the same thought, stating, "It appears that this case may be more intricate than initially anticipated." On the major news broadcast, the story of Kishin's losses in Kyushu Island, Fukuoka City, made headlines. The segment featured interviews with the truck drivers involved. What was originally a private matter had suddenly become public knowledge, much to the surprise of those involved. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Headquarters found themselves in an embarrassing situation as the unexpected revelation involving Kishin unfolded. Public opinion on the matter was diverse. Most individuals were calling for the apprehension of these lawless individuals, deeming them a serious threat to society. Others insisted on severe punishments for the group of wrongdoers. The differing viewpoints regarding the incident extended to various segments of society. At Nintendo headquarters, Takuza Yamamoto grew increasingly concerned after watching the news and promptly reached out to Shin. In this world, Yakuza hierarchy varies among different families, with distinct titles holding equivalent ranks. For instance, Sako Koman is equivalent to Wakaga Shira. Additionally, titles like Kyumiko and Oyabun are interchangeable in some families, while in others, Oyabun holds greater authority than Kyumiko. The Yakuza family hierarchies in this world are intricate and flexible. Chapter 78, Revered Fierce God? The incident involving Shin reached the ears of competitors like Suzuki and Tora, leading them to gloat at the situation. Simultaneously, it heightened their vigilance against the criminal organization. Fortunately, they had connections with the Underworld, particularly with the Yakuza. Takuza contacted Shin to inquire about his well-being. Upon learning that Shin was doing well, Takuza requested a face-to-face meeting. Shin agreed, prompting Takuza to hastily make his way to Toshima Ward, Tokyo, and visit Kishin's headquarters for their meeting. Upon entering Shin's office, Takuza found Shin already seated, waiting for him. Takuza settled on the couch and faced Shin. Shin had already prepared coffee, and as he sipped it, he suddenly inquired, "You mentioned on the phone that you have information about who sabotaged our distribution trucks in Fukuoka City." Takuza, initially relaxed, turned serious and nodded, responding, "Yes." Shin chuckled, "Really? Even as the Japanese police are still investigating the situation, you somehow know." His tone remained calm, but his eyes scrutinized Takuza with suspicion. Observing Shin's expression and doubt, Takuza chuckled helplessly and said, "Hey, don't look at me like that. I'm not involved in this." He raised his hands in denial. Shin smiled and questioned with doubt, "Then how did you find out? Is your intelligence better than the Tokyo police's?" Takuza shook his head and, with a smile, replied, "Yes and no." He rested his chin on his hand, noticing Shin's confusion, and continued, "While I do have access to information regarding the distribution truck incident, my intelligence doesn't match the level of the Tokyo police, let alone surpass it." As Shin nodded in understanding, Takuza elaborated, "Our family's company actually has some connections within the Underworld and the Yakuza." This revelation surprised Shin, who responded with a hint of amazement, "Really? I didn't expect that." Takuza nodded and proceeded to divulge, "The ones responsible for sabotaging your distribution trucks in Fukuoka City are likely from the Yakuza family known as the Yamada family." Even though Shin had suspected Yakuza involvement for some time, hearing it confirmed still surprised him. Observing the surprise on Shin's face, Takuza nodded and added, "According to our information, your products appearing in Fukuoka City impacted the Yamada family's business, which is likely why they took that action." Shin nodded in comprehension and said, "I see." Seeing that Shin grasped the situation, Takuza proceeded to inform him, "The only way to safely operate in Fukuoka City is to provide the Yamada family with some money for protection." Shin, hearing this, chuckled wryly and expressed, "So, I have to pay them for protecting my business or protecting my business from them?" He found the concept almost laughable. Takuza also chuckled helplessly and suppressed a laugh before saying, "Unfortunately, there's no other way around it." Some Yakuza families can be quite unreasonable at times. Shin snorted and remarked, seems like there's no way out of this, hey. Yakuza noticed Shin's frustration and suddenly had an idea, saying, unless you have connections with another Yakuza family on Kyushu Island that could counter the Yamada family. That might reduce the threat they pose. Shin pondered this suggestion. He vaguely remembered that his family, the Suzuki group, had some Yakuza connections, but he didn't have all the details. He had initially assumed the Yakuza in this world to be more accommodating, but now he realized they were far from it. Upon hearing Yakuza's suggestions, Shin shook his head and firmly stated, no, I don't need the help of the Yakuza. Yakuza anticipated this response from Shin. Given his previous interactions with him, Shin was known for being law-abiding and rational. However, what Shin said next surprised him. I'll just establish my own security company to protect myself, my fiancé, and my business, Shin said with a chuckle, though he acknowledged the seeming impracticality of his idea. Yakuza already knew Shin's fiancé, but what truly caught him off guard was Shin's bold statement without apparent hesitation. It seemed contrary to Shin's typically logical nature. Setting up their own security company was no small feat. Yakuza voiced his confusion, asking, why not partner with an existing security company? Why create your own? Shin replied with a smile, of course, I'll still collaborate with a security company to safeguard my business until my own security company becomes capable. However, I don't want to rely on them entirely, as I don't have full trust in their capabilities. Yakuza chuckled wryly and remarked, it seems you have trust issues. Shin shook his head, countering, trust issues? I don't think so. If the security companies here were truly competent, I don't see why other large companies and corporations would maintain connections with the Underworld and the Yakuza, some even paying protection fees to different Yakuza families. Yakuza nodded in agreement and said, you're absolutely right. Then, he suddenly recalled something and added with a smile, however, there's a catch. There's a particular Yakuza family keen on discovering the person behind Kishin. Shin became intrigued and responded thoughtfully, oh, really? Yakuza nodded once more and explained, this Yakuza family is just one of the numerous Yakuza families in our network that have taken an interest in you. He followed up with a chuckle, you might find this surprising, but some of these Yakuza families revere you as the founder of Kishin, like a fierce god, Kishin, of Shinto and Buddhism. Shin was genuinely shocked, his eyes widening as he exclaimed, really? No way. Yakuza nodded and confirmed, it's true. Yakuza families often hold strong beliefs in cultural traditions like Shinto and Buddhism. That's why they view your company, Kishin, as a descendant of the fierce god. Shin was even more surprised and responded with disbelief, you can't be serious. Yakuza nodded with a serious demeanor, saying, I forgot to mention this earlier due to my concerns about the incident, but the respected Yakuza families we have connections with actually believe that the mysterious founder of Kishin is a descendant of a fierce god. He looked directly at Shin, who wore a shocked expression, and continued, prepare yourself, Shinro Suzuki, for what I'm about to reveal next. Shin gazed at Yakuza, his expression one of revelation and astonishment. He found it hard to believe there were such peculiar groups in this world. They revere you, Shinro. Yakuza exclaimed with utmost seriousness. This could be your opportunity to quell the Yamada family. Shin gazed at Yakuza with astonishment. What he had just learned reshaped his perception of the Yakuza. Perhaps this could be an opportunity he could exploit? Chapter 79, Unforeseen developments awaited Shin. At the Kishin headquarters. Shin gazed at Yakuza with a hint of concern in his eyes. He hesitated before asking, are you absolutely certain that reaching out to them won't pose any risks? Yakuza, in response to Shin's question, simply chuckled and replied, I can't promise complete safety, but you know, the Yakuza connected to our company aren't all that troublesome. Shin managed a wry smile, finding Takuza's reliability questionable at times. He responded, "Give me some time to ponder this." Takuza offered a reassuring smile and said, "Sure, take your time. Just reach out when you're ready." As Shin sipped his coffee, he couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. Little did they both know. The extent to which Kishin was revered by the Yakuza turned out to be far more exaggerated than either of them had initially realized. Takuza, on his part, had limited knowledge, only aware that certain Yakuza families were showing deep reverence to the Kishin founder due to their company connections. With this scant information, Takuza made a decision. He reached out to one of the Yakuza subordinates to convey that Shin would be taking their proposal into consideration. The Yakuza underling he contacted happened to be the one who had provided him with that information. Location: Kobe, Japan. Nestled in the heart of Kobe, a grand and traditional Japanese mansion stood proudly. It served as the headquarters for Japan's most formidable Yakuza syndicate, closely tied to numerous influential Yakuza families. They were known as the Yamauchi-gumi. The Yamauchi-gumi commanded thousands of loyal subordinates and held alliances with several influential Yakuza clans, a testament to their formidable influence and power. The Yamauchi-gumi was established by Soma Yamauchi. This Yakuza syndicate, the Yamauchi-gumi, was the one Shitai Chikafuji had affiliations with. Currently, the Yamauchi-gumi was under the leadership of Obu. Within the confines of a traditional Japanese house, in a spacious hall, were men dressed in nothing but white cloths that covered their modesty. These men were seated in a disciplined formation, with a man in his 30s at the forefront, similarly clad in white garments that protected his privacy. The men's bodies were adorned with tattoos, covering every inch, except for the man in the forefront, who appeared to be the leader. He sported only a few tattoos, one of which was a striking dragon etched onto his back. The man at the head of this assembly was none other than Obu, the current leader of the Yamauchi-gumi. Obu fixed a solemn gaze upon his men before speaking gravely, "The Yamada family appears to have forgotten their place, daring to attack our revered Kishin." His eyes shifted toward the center of the hall, where a human-sized statue stood, bearing the fearsome visage of an Oni demon. This statue, clad in a black suit, its hands nonchalantly tucked into its pockets, bore the bold inscription Kishin on its suit's back with powerful strokes. Indeed, this immensely influential and powerful family held Kishin in the highest regard, especially its founder. Oyabun Obu, the leader, bore unique tattoos that reflected his deep admiration for video games. On his right shoulder, he proudly displayed the Super Mario Bros. Title along with Mario and a Mario-themed background. His left shoulder featured Link and Zelda. Even his high-ranking subordinates, who were already covered in tattoos, willingly removed some of their ink to make space for Kishin's video game characters on their bodies. Oyabun Obu, together with his top men, shared a mutual passion and fascination for the video games produced by Kishin. One by one, Kishin continued to release an array of captivating video games. When Oyabun Obu launched an investigation into Kishin and its founder, he was astounded to discover that everything had been set in motion by a young man who hadn't even reached the age of 20. This revelation left Oyabun Obu and his devoted high-ranking followers, who revered Kishin and its video games, in a state of shock. Subsequently, they began to speculate that the founder of Kishin might be a reincarnation of the Kishin fierce god. It was difficult for them to fathom how a young man could establish a rapidly growing company and create such mesmerizing video games in a matter of months. Initially, they discreetly monitored Shinro Suzuki, and during their surveillance, they noticed him in the company of a woman, later discovering that she was the fiancée of the fierce god. They opted not to reveal themselves to the fierce god, fearing they might inadvertently incur the wrath of the kami deities. Then, a news report highlighted an incident in Fukuoka City where Kishin had incurred some losses. This news didn't sit well with the leader of the Yamaguchi-gumi, Oyabun Obu. When he discovered this, he ordered his men to investigate the situation in Fukuoka City, and they soon learned that it was the work of a small Yakuza family known as the Yamada family. Now, in addition to their usual gang matters, they were deliberating on how to handle the Yamada family. Just as they were preparing to take action, the sound of approaching footsteps reached their ears, and the gang members became alert as one of their underlings urgently slid open the door, appearing to be in a great hurry. The underling was panting heavily, his breaths labored. One of the high-ranking Yakuza members scolded him with a frown. "What is the meaning of this? Do you lack discipline? Have you no respect for us?" Many of the high-ranking Yakuza, including their leader, Oyabun Obu, fixed stern gazes upon the underling. Clearly frightened, the underling bowed deeply and stammered, "Forgive me, honored lords." Oyabun Obu furrowed his brow and inquired, "Why are you in such a hurry that you've interrupted our discussion?" The underling bowed even lower and replied, "Oyabun-sama. I've just received a report that the Kishin founder may be meeting with one of the families affiliated with us." Obu and the high-ranking men, who had initially been frowning, were taken aback. Obu quickly inquired, "What do you mean? Why would the kami consider meeting with a Yakuza family?" Another high-ranking Yakuza joined in, asking, "Where did you get this information?" The underling began to relax a little as he explained, "It was the Nintengoku who informed the subordinate of Ebina family." Obu and the high-ranking Yakuza men pondered this. Obu nodded knowingly and said, "Ah, Nintengu, the one that collaborated with the kami's subsidiary company." He rested his chin on his hand in thought. Another high-ranking Yakuza added, "Indeed, the son of Tempaku Yamamoto made a wise move. It's a clever decision to partner with the kami. I heard he even had a meeting with the kami. Lucky." The high-ranking Yakuza men engaged in discussion among themselves. The underling remained silent, bowing his head. He was apprehensive in this peculiar situation. Obu leaned back, resting his head on his hand, and condescendingly asked the underling, "So, which family is it?" The underling bowed his head, still afraid to meet the gaze of the most powerful leader of the Yakuza gang that commanded thousands of men. The Nintendoku, Takuza Yamamoto, mentioned that the kami is considering a meeting with one of the Yakuza families affiliated with us. It's the Ebina family. A hushed silence fell over Obu and the high-ranking Yakuza men. But beneath that silence, there was excitement brewing. Obu quickly decided, "Contact Takuza and tell him to guide the kami-sama to our headquarters." Though the high-ranking Yakuza men were somewhat surprised by Obu's choice, they also found it to be the right one. They were eager to meet the kami-sama in person. The underling respectfully acknowledged, "Understood." Meanwhile, Shin, who was sharing an intimate moment with Myra in bed, remained oblivious to the unpredictable situation that awaited him. Chapter 80, Shin's Decision. Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. At the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, Investigation Supervisor Tetsui Toru received unexpected news from the commander. He was informed that they would be halting their investigation into the Kishin incident on Kyushu Island in Fukuoka City. Tetsui Toru was taken aback by this revelation and immediately requested an explanation from the commander. However, the commander remained silent, leaving Tetsui Toru feeling both helpless and somewhat frustrated. With no other option available, Tetsui Toru had to inform Kishin's representative about this development. At Kishin headquarters. Shin, the asset protection manager, had just received word that the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department had withdrawn their support. This left him in a state of solemn reflection. It prompted him to re-evaluate his perspective on the Yakuza. The Yamada family of the Yakuza must possess the ability to influence the Tokyo police, which explains why the investigation was halted. Despite the Japanese government's efforts to weaken the Yakuza, their influence in the police and even in politics cannot be underestimated. Their roots still run deep within Japanese society. With these thoughts in mind, Shin had no choice but to reluctantly agree with Takuza. For the time being, he would establish connections with the Yakuza. After all, there was no telling when another Yakuza family might target his company's business again in the near future. Perhaps if he expanded further into different regions of Japan, he might face Yakuza threats once more. Such a situation was highly undesirable. If he couldn't resolve it through legal means, he would have to employ the Yakuza against the Yakuza, as the saying goes, fitting Sun Tzu's strategy. However, Shin had momentarily forgotten about that saying. At Nintendo headquarters, Tempaku Yamamoto gazed at his son, who was comfortably seated on the plush sofa in his office. Tempaku had been consistently surprised by his son's recent actions. He had discovered that Yakuza managed to establish a collaboration with their rival, Kishin Merchandise. What's more, he had learned that his son had even met with the founder of Kishin. Furthermore, during this time, he received a message from his son, who mentioned that he had invited Kishin's founder to establish connections with the Yakuza. This decision was prompted by the recent incident on Kyushu Island in Fukuoka City. Are you certain about inviting such a young man into the underworld? Tempaku Yamamoto asked in a serious tone. Yakuza smiled and nodded, responding in a relaxed manner, he'll inevitably have to deal with them sooner or later. It might be wise for him to establish connections with them, or else Kishin could risk losing its position in the local markets. Tempaku nodded in agreement. In reality, Kishin had managed to expand because certain Yakuza families had allowed Kishin to grow in Tokyo, especially in the Kanto region. This was largely due to these particular Yakuza families' admiration for Kishin's video games and its founder. Why did these Yakuza families support Kishin's growth? It was because this unique group of families regarded Kishin as the embodiment of Shinto and Buddhist beliefs, considering it the Kishin of their faith. Yakuza observed his father's nod and remarked, "Besides, you know he'll be safe. The Yakuza family I'm introducing Shinro to is the one that reveres him, after all." Tempaku chuckled upon hearing this. "I really can't comprehend their ways, but you're right. They're deeply rooted in rituals and superstitions, so I suppose it's not out of the ordinary." Haha. Yakuza joined in the laughter. As they conversed, Yakuza's phone rang. He retrieved it from his pocket and saw that it was Shinro Suzuki calling. Yakuza signaled to his father, Tempaku Yamamoto, to remain quiet as he answered the phone. "Hello, Shinro-kun. How have you been?" Shin's voice came through the other end of the phone. "I'm doing well, thank you." Yakuza smiled and inquired, "Since you're calling, I assume you've given my suggestion some thought." Shin, who appeared hesitant on the other end of the phone, disclosed, "The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department has withdrawn. They no longer want to pursue the matter." Yakuza chuckled upon hearing this news. "Hehe, that's hardly surprising. The Yamada family wields significant influence in Kyushu Island, especially in Fukuoka City." He couldn't help but think that Shinro must be more inclined to agree with his suggestion now. Indeed, Yakuza's assumption was soon confirmed when Shin replied, "I concur with the idea of forming connections with the Yakuza family." Yakuza smiled, relieved that Shin had agreed. The Yakuza family that had shown interest in meeting Shin was exceedingly enthusiastic. They practically wanted to embrace him tightly when Yakuza informed them of Shin's willingness to meet. This Yakuza family, specifically the Ebina family, was based in Kyoto. When Yakuza returned to Kyoto, he arranged a meeting with them. In the Nishijin ward, Kyoto. The Ebina family, a Yakuza clan, was headquartered here. Much like other Yakuza families, their residence resembled a traditional Japanese mansion, albeit not as opulent as the Yamauchi-gumi syndicate. Soga Toshio, the Kumiko, leader, of the Ebina family, a middle-aged man, had just been informed that the Yamauchi-gumi wanted to seize the opportunity to meet with their revered kami. Soga Toshio knew who had leaked this information as he gazed solemnly at the subordinate who had received the information from Yakuza. This subordinate was the one who had informed the Yamauchi-gumi. "Did you disclose this to the Yamauchi-gumi?" Soga Toshio inquired with a serious tone. Other high-ranking members of the Ebina family also directed their attention toward the nervous subordinates dressed in black suits standing before them. The subordinate lowered his head, speaking hesitantly, "Kumiko-sama, it was you who instructed me to inform both our family and the Yamauchi-gumi about Kishin-sama." He bowed guiltily after making this admission. Soga Toshio's expression darkened, and he responded with a serious tone, "This situation is different. I issued that order when the Yamauchi-gumi's members informed us that the kami would be coming to Kyoto with his fiancée, and I had promised the Yamauchi-gumi that I would keep them updated." The other high-ranking Yakuza members nodded in agreement. Soga Toshio continued, "However, arranging a personal meeting with the kami is an entirely different matter. Why did you divulge this information to them?" The subordinate lowered his head even further. The other Yakuza high-ranking members joined in reprimanding the subordinate. "Do you realize that we missed a crucial opportunity because of your actions?" The subordinate knelt and pressed his head to the ground, saying, "I deeply apologize." This change left Takuza feeling vigilant and cautious. The Yamauchi-gumi was an extensive syndicate, and Takuza was unfamiliar with such a large organization. Puzzled by the sudden shift, he inquired with the Ebina family about the reason behind it. However, the Ebina family simply reassured him without providing much explanation. With few options left, Takuza boarded a bullet train bound for Tokyo to discuss the change in plans with Shin. Meeting Shin at a cafe, Takuza informed him that he would be engaging with the most formidable and extensive syndicate instead of the Yakuza family he was accustomed to. This revelation left Shin worried, causing him to contemplate whether he should cancel the meeting with the Yakuza. Takuza tried to reassure him by mentioning the Yakuza syndicate's interest in Shin. However, this reassurance failed to ease Shin's concerns. This unpredictable situation left Shin deep in thought. He was uncertain about what the future held, but he knew that this decision would significantly impact his company's growth in Japan. To expand beyond his family's company, the Suzuki Group, and the Tora Corporation, he realized he would have to take risks, regardless of the challenges ahead. Chapter 81, Trepidation. Prefecture of Kanagawa, City of Yokohama. Yokohama City held the distinction of being Japan's second largest city. It was also home to the second most notorious gang in Japan, the Muchizuki Kai, closely following the Yamauchi-gumi. In contrast to traditional Japanese mansions, their headquarters took the form of a corporate building, resembling a company more than anything else. This structure, however, operated much like a black company, imposing excessive workloads on its employees. Within the expansive and opulent leader's office, masquerading as a CEO, sat Kenichiro Tominaga, the head of this criminal organization. Standing before him, alongside a lady on his arm, was his son, Kenshin Tominaga. With a proud expression, Kenshin introduced his girlfriend, Reina Suzuki, to his father. Reina Suzuki found herself in an uncomfortable situation, glancing around the room. She had been invited by her boyfriend to meet his family in Yokohama, as their family business was situated there, and it was only a short bullet train ride away. However, she had not anticipated that her charming boyfriend's father would be a menacing middle-aged man bearing a scar on his face. Kenichiro Tominaga couldn't help but chuckle at Reina's nervousness and reassured her, saying, "No need to be so tense, my dear. I promise, I don't bite, hee hee." Kenshin joined in his father's laughter, adding reassuringly, "No need to feel nervous. My father might appear intimidating on the outside, but he's actually quite kind-hearted inside." Kenichiro Tominaga's laughter only grew louder in response to his son's comment. Reina found the exchange between the father and son to be somewhat unusual, but she attributed it to their close relationship. In response to Kenshin's reassurance, Reina simply nodded. Kenichiro Tominaga attempted to put on a kindly smile, but his fierce appearance persisted as he inquired, "I've heard that your father is the chairman of the Suzuki Group." Reina Suzuki, her initial worry replaced by a sense of pride, nodded confidently and replied with a hint of arrogance, "Yes, that's correct." Kenichiro Tominaga didn't mind Reina Suzuki's confidence and responded with an even wider smile, saying, "Ah, I never expected my son to be so fortunate as to have the Suzuki Group's princess as his girlfriend." Despite feeling scared and nervous in Kinichiro Tominaga's presence, Reina Suzuki maintained her composure and spoke with a touch of arrogance. Kenshin and Kinichiro exchanged discreet glances, harboring a hidden desire for the Suzuki family's wealth. Even if they couldn't acquire all of it, they believed they could secure shares of the Suzuki group through Shiro Suzuki's inheritance. Given Reina Suzuki's special place in Shiro Suzuki's heart, she was likely to receive a substantial inheritance. This could significantly boost Mochizuki Kai's business. However, their future plans would soon face an unexpected interruption, as Reina's brother was poised to challenge them with his formidable force. Inside Shin's car. The car smoothly traversed the road, with Takuza at the wheel, en route to the Yamauchi-gumi headquarters. Shin couldn't deny feeling nervous as they neared the location, his heart pounding in his chest. Doubts began to creep into his mind. After all, in his previous life, he had met his end when his boss had ordered someone from the underworld to eliminate him. This traumatic experience left Shin with lingering doubts about the success of his current plan. As they arrived in Kobe, Tokyo, Shin's car drew closer to the Yamauchi-gumi's location. Takuza steered the vehicle onto a particular road, where they were soon intercepted by a convoy of black cars. Men clad in black suits emerged from the vehicles and rapped on Shin's driver's side window. Takuza, still seated at the wheel, lowered the car window, revealing a man in a black suit. The man in the black suit was Sato Nakamura, who had been tasked by the Oyabun himself to wait for a specific car to arrive. When he spotted the Mercedes approaching, he and his men intercepted the vehicle to verify if it was indeed the car or individuals the Oyabun was expecting. Sato inquired, "Hello, are you Takuza Yamamoto?" He peered inside the car and observed a young man wearing a blue jacket, adorned with Kishin merchandise branding, hands casually in his pockets. Sato scrutinized the young man's features. Takuza nodded in response to Sato's question and promptly produced his identification for verification. Sato shifted his attention from Shinro to Takuza. He examined the provided ID, then glanced at his men, who affirmed the confirmation. The men in black suits nodded in agreement with Sato. Sato nodded as he stated, "We've confirmed your identity as the person the Oyabun is expecting." However, Sato's gaze returned to Shin, who nonchalantly met his eyes. Sato furrowed his brow and asked, "Who is this young man?" Initially relieved, Takuza was taken aback by Sato's question. He responded with a hint of surprise, "You weren't informed." Sato's frown deepened as he shook his head. Takuza chuckled softly and explained, "This young man is the one your Oyabun wished to meet." Upon hearing this, Sato was visibly surprised. He scrutinized Shin's youthful appearance, finding it hard to believe. "Are you sure about this? That person seems too young. What possible business could he have with the Oyabun?" Sato questioned, skepticism evident in his voice. Takuza wore a slight smile as he responded nonchalantly, "That's not your concern." He delivered the reply with a directness devoid of much emotion. In his eyes, the man before him appeared to be nothing more than a subordinate. Takuza had interacted with numerous influential Yakuza families in his city, making him impervious to intimidation from the man in the black suit. Sato appeared taken aback by Takuza's direct and indifferent response. Despite his frown, Sato chose not to press the matter any further. Takuza was right, it wasn't his place to question. Sato solemnly nodded to Takuza and, with a serious demeanor, signaled to the group of formally dressed men in black suits. Sato cast one last glance at Takuza before making his way back to the car and stepping inside. The convoy of black cars shifted to clear a path for Shin's car. As Takuza closed the car's window, Shin gazed at him in surprise and commented, "I had no idea you could be so intimidating at times." Initially, Shin had perceived Takuza as a laid-back and easygoing person, never expecting him to exude such coldness. Takuza chuckled as he continued driving deeper into the Yamauchi-gumi's territory. "You see, that's how you must interact with individuals of that occupation," he explained. He glanced back at Shin before returning his focus to the road. I treat people based on their professions, he added, pausing briefly to emphasize his point. Shinro. You're about to encounter dangerous individuals. It's crucial to maintain a poker face. Revealing vulnerability could lead them to perceive you as weak and unworthy of respect. They might mock you and take advantage, he conveyed, his expression turning serious. Upon hearing Takuza's advice, Shin adopted a resolute demeanor and nodded in appreciation. I understand. Thank you for the guidance, Shin acknowledged. He truly valued the advice, recognizing its significance as he prepared to confront perilous individuals. In no time, he would come face to face with individuals who had blood on their hands. Despite his natural inclination to avoid such encounters, he had no choice but to proceed in order to ensure the growth of his company in this parallel Japan. Guys, I'm pleasantly surprised that when I woke up, we were already in the top 8. Thank you, and I apologize for the delayed updates. Chapter 82, Kishin Kami-sama. Kobe, Tokyo. Yamauchi-gumi headquarters. As Shin and Takuza gazed upon the entrance of the grand Japanese traditional mansion from their car, it exuded a sense of classic antiquity, enveloped in a captivating charm. The impeccably dressed men in black suits, belonging to the Yamauchi-gumi, were positioned at the entrance. One of them approached Shin's car, opening the door for him, while another did the same for the driver. These two men in black suits displayed great respect, particularly towards Shin, who was adorned in Kishin's distinctive blue jacket. In contrast to Ctto, who appeared to be a freelance operative with affiliations to various Yakuza families under the Yamauchi-gumi, these black-suited individuals were direct subordinates of high-ranking Yakuza within the Yamauchi-gumi. Consequently, they possessed crucial information regarding the young man who held a special place in their bosses' hearts. With the car door opened for him, Shin stepped out and cast his gaze upon the mansion's entrance. Flanking the sides were groups of black-clad men, standing in orderly rows, bowing respectfully towards both Shin and Takuza. This sight deeply shocked Shin. It reminded him of a scene from a gangster movie he had watched in his previous life. Despite his astonishment, he recalled Takuza's advice and maintained a stoic and indifferent expression as he nodded in gratitude to the man who had opened the door for him. Upon catching a glimpse of Shin's composed demeanor, some of the black-suited men showed even greater respect and restraint. So, this is the Kishin Kami-sama, thought some of the black-suited men. Takuza observed Shin's calm demeanor and silently approved. However, deep down, Takuza was also taken aback by the scene before him, causing his eyes to slightly widen. It felt as if he held a position of great importance within a certain organization, as if he were someone truly special. Unbeknownst to Takuza, the respect was directed towards Shin and not himself. Once Takuza had regained his composure, Shin secretly calmed himself as well. One of the two men who had opened the car door for Shin guided them further inside the Japanese traditional mansion. As they walked deeper into the mansion, both Shin and Takuza were pleasantly surprised to find that it was even more beautiful than they had imagined. As they ventured further into the mansion, it became increasingly evident that the estate was not only larger but also more expansive. Beyond the threshold, they found themselves strolling through a meticulously arranged garden. This garden had been meticulously divided into various sections, each showcasing the beauty of different plants and trees. Amidst this greenery, there was a large pond with a rock bridge gracefully arching over it. In another section, bamboos with katana cuts adorned some of the stalks, although most remained pristine. In this tranquil setting, it felt as though they had stepped back in time, with distant pavilions adding to the ambience. Despite maintaining his poker-faced expression, Shin was on the verge of breaking into amazement. The mansion's sheer size and opulence were overwhelming. The black-suited men continued their respectful guidance, leading them toward the main Japanese traditional house. Upon crossing the bridge, they entered the Genkan, the entrance hall. Here, a captivating woman politely instructed Shin and Takuza to remove their shoes. The man leading Shin and Takuza appeared ready to express his displeasure, but a reassuring pat on the shoulder from Shin caused him to lower his head in a show of respect and apprehension. Though the man was aware that it was against tradition to enter with shoes on, he understood that the individual before him was held in high regard by those in authority. Shin promptly complied, slipping off his shoes, leaving him in only socks. Yakuza observed Shin's swift adaptation and admired his composure. Shin was indeed projecting a cool demeanor. Yakuza, too, removed his shoes, and following the lead of the woman in traditional Japanese attire, both Shin and Yakuza carefully removed their socks. This was a necessary precaution to prevent any damage to the tatami mats that lined the interior of the house, preserving its pristine condition. Afterward, with their bare feet, Shin and Yakuza, accompanied by the man who had also removed his shoes and socks, proceeded to guide them to the main hall. At the far end of the hall, Shin and Yakuza's eyes fell upon a statue depicting an ominous Shinto entity. Despite initially feeling at ease within the Japanese traditional mansion, Shin's comfort began to wane, leaving him somewhat unsettled. However, he managed to maintain his poker face. Yakuza discreetly glanced at Shin and couldn't help but be amazed by his unwavering composure. Yakuza even began to wonder if Shin was genuinely indifferent or simply an exceptional actor. The man led them to the entrance of the main hall and respectfully slid open the shoji doors in silence. As Shin and Yakuza peered through the doors, they beheld the imposing figures seated with discipline upon the tatami floor. The most striking among them was an individual adorned with only a few tattoos amidst a sea of heavily inked, nearly naked men. They all wore white clothing as modest coverings for their private areas, much like the men who sat in attendance. Upon the expansive Japanese traditional table before them lay an array of delectable Japanese traditional dishes. Just a moment ago, inside the main hall of the Yamauchi-gumi, the group of high-ranking Yakuza men, along with their leader, Obu, were already seated on the tatami floor. The table was laden with a feast of dishes and sake, all prepared in honor of their revered Kishin. Ah, I wish I could have personally greeted the Kishin at the entrance. Lamented Goto Norio, the senior advisor, Seiko Komen, of the Yamauchi-gumi. Me too. Meeting the reincarnated fierce god is a tremendous honor, exclaimed one of the high-ranking men, his eyes brimming with fervent reverence. This man even sported tattoos, including one of Mario near his spectacles. The young Oyabun, Obu, in his 30s, was also eagerly awaiting the arrival. He had even arranged an expensive color television and a Kishin Famicom connected to it, possibly hoping to share some amusement with the kami. As they waited in anticipation, the sliding door gracefully slid open, capturing their attention. The room's gaze fixated on the entrance door, which had cracked slightly. They caught a tantalizing glimpse of the individual they had been eagerly awaiting. And as the sliding door was fully drawn back, they laid eyes on a young man adorned in a blue Kishin merchandise jacket, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. His expression conveyed indifference, and the profound chill in his eyes threatened to draw them into its enigmatic world. The high-ranking men of the Yamauchi-gumi, each of their names alone enough to strike fear into the underworld, were left dumbfounded. Their amazement, bewilderment, and shock were evident as a mix of expressions played across their faces. Their eyes widened, and sweat formed on their foreheads. They keenly felt the weight of the fierce god's gaze bearing down upon them, as though the heavens themselves were hurtling towards them at a breakneck speed. Behind Shin's figure, they almost seemed to discern the phantom presence of the fierce god, with its menacing countenance, staring right back at them. It was as if the Kishin desired to assert dominion over them, demanding their unwavering obedience to the fierce god before them. Oyabun Obu found himself perspiring slightly, sensing the pressure emanating from Shinro Suzuki and the heavy atmosphere in the room. Before he could bow to greet the Kishin, Goto Norio beat him to it. He rushed forward, kneeling obediently in front of the Kishin and pressing his forehead into the tatami floor. With a resounding roar, he declared, "I, Goto Norio, the senior advisor, Wakaga Shira or Seiko Komen, of the Yamauchi-gumi, welcome Kishin Kami-sama." He paid no mind to whether he was seen by his subordinates, Shin or Yakuza, an unfamiliar face. For the high-ranking men within the main hall, Goto Norio's actions seemed entirely normal. However, for Shin and Takuza, they appeared highly unusual. Despite his unyielding poker face, Shin couldn't help but feel deeply shocked within his heart. He grimly thought, these guys. They're deadly serious. Chapter 83, The Reason for Reverence and a Shocking Request. Kobe, Tokyo. Yamauchi-gumi headquarters. Shin was profoundly shaken. The person before him left him utterly astonished. The man possessed a formidable, tattoo-covered physique, with one tattoo standing out conspicuously, a cute depiction of Super Mario on his left shoulder, complete with blue skies, 2D pixel Mario, and mushrooms. Shin couldn't help but question internally, is this person in their right mind? Nevertheless, he heeded Takuza's advice and maintained a poker face. He realized that one wrong expression could tip the balance of the situation. Ironically, it was Takuza, who had advised Shinro, that betrayed a shocked expression as his eyes widened. Is this, for real? Is the most prominent syndicate gang in Japan truly showing such reverence for Shinro Suzuki? Takuza thought, his expression reflecting disbelief. Then, the senior advisor, Goto Norio, and the many high-ranking Yakuza in attendance finally took notice of the subordinate who had escorted Kishin to the main hall, along with Takuza Yamamoto. Goto Norio raised his head and turned to the subordinate and Takuza, saying, "Please wait outside. We need to have a conversation with the Kishin." The attentive subordinate immediately bowed respectfully and guided the astonished Takuza out. However, Takuza blurted out, "Wait, I'm not included." Before realizing that he was standing on the grounds of the most powerful Yakuza syndicate in Japan. Oyabun Obu and the high-ranking Yakuza present regarded Takuza with narrowed eyes. Shin, who overheard this exchange, remained silent out of fear while maintaining his poker face. He simply nodded at Takuza. The Yakuza members who witnessed this nodded in appreciation of the Kishin's understanding. Takuza gave a wry smile and nodded. "I'll wait outside," he said to Shin before leaving with the Yakuza subordinate. As the door closed, Shin found himself alone in a room with this group of formidable individuals. Shin could almost hear his heart pounding loudly. Goto Norio, who had been kneeling, stood up and walked to the table, gesturing for Shin to join them. "Kishin-sama, please have a seat. We've prepared a lot of food for you." The high-ranking Yakuza looked at Shin with admiration in their eyes as they extended their invitation. "Please, entertain us mere mortals for a while, Kishin-sama. Our chefs, who prepared this feast, are top-notch." "Yes. Our chefs are in high demand even in foreign countries like the UK, USA, South Korea, and Hong Kong." The group of senior Yakuza members, despite their aging appearances, tried their best to appear kind and welcoming, although their faces still carried an air of ferocity and intimidation. Shin managed a faint smile, but beneath his calm exterior, he was already contemplating how to handle the forthcoming conversation and the expectations these individuals had of him. He followed Goto Norio and settled himself on traditional tatami mats, attempting to ease his nerves as he sat. After everyone had introduced themselves to Shin, his anxiety only intensified. Everyone here held significant influence. Oyabun Obu maintained a smile as he addressed the Kishin before him. "Kishin, we've heard that the Yamada family attacked the distribution trucks of your company." As everyone focused on Shin, awaiting his response, he remained composed, unfazed by Oyabun's inquiry. "Such, an ice-cold demon. Kishin is truly extraordinary," nearly every Yakuza member thought. While Oyabun Obu gazed thoughtfully at Shin, deep inside, he had always harbored doubts about whether the Kishin founder truly embodied the essence of Kami's reincarnation. Yet, observing the Kishin's icy demeanor and the aura he had exuded earlier, he grew increasingly convinced that it was indeed the Kishin. Obu was a devout believer in Shinto religion, understanding that Kami possessed both good and evil aspects. He continued to scrutinize the Kishin before them to discern if goodness resided within. Finding a kami is an exceptionally rare occurrence. Long ago, Japan's emperors were believed to ascend to the status of kami upon their passing. Similarly, ancestors from Japan's imperial or noble families who perished were often revered as guardians or kami. The scriptures pertaining to kami are intricate, and the Shinto religion recognizes an extensive multitude of kami, numbering in the hundreds of thousands. As Obu delved into deep contemplation, Shin, who was internally quite nervous, made an effort to maintain his composed poker face. All eyes were fixated on him, intensifying the pressure he felt. Shin managed a faint smile and calmly responded, regarding that. The Yamada family in Kyushu Island, Fukuoka City, has indeed posed quite a challenge for us. He maintained a relaxed tone, adding, "We initially sought to investigate the matter, but the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department." Shin paused before continuing, decided to withdraw their support. The high-ranking Yakuza exchanged glances, and their attention returned to Oyabun Obu. Oyabun Obu sighed, offering a reassuring smile to the Kishin. He confessed, "Don't be upset, Kishin. I'm the one who ordered the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department to halt their involvement." Shin, upon hearing this revelation, found himself somewhat taken aback. Up until now, he had operated under the assumption that the Yamada family held sway over the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. However, despite this newfound information, Shin recognized his powerlessness in the situation. So, he summoned a smile, ensuring it appeared genuine, and responded with a feigned nonchalance, "Oh, really? I see. I had always presumed that the Yamada family lacked the influence to command the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department." Shin couldn't help but reflect, "Thank goodness I've diligently practiced my facial expressions in front of the mirror for months. I used to do it to ensure I presented myself well to my employees, and now it's proving to be invaluable." Indeed, the high-ranking Yakuza and Oyabun Obu gazed at the Kishin, sensing his composure and benevolence. Gradually, they became almost certain that the individual before them was, indeed, a kami. He embodied both good and evil, light and darkness. He displayed both coldness and kindness. In truth, Goto Norio's exaggerated act of kneeling was a deliberate ploy to observe more of the Kishin's reactions. Although they had initially felt the pressure of meeting the Kishin, they stuck to their plan, using Goto Norio's exaggerated posture to further assess the Kishin. Then, Oyabun Obu posed a serious question, "Lord Kishin, we can handle the Yamada family without issue, on one condition." All eyes focused on Shin. Shin turned his attention to the leader, Oyabun Obu, waiting for further details. One condition, he wondered. Oyabun Obu gazed at Shin with utmost seriousness, bowing his head as he made a solemn request, "Please accept the position of Oyabun for the Yamauchi-gumi in my stead." Shin struggled to maintain his poker face upon hearing this unexpected proposal. The high-ranking Yakuza members regarded Shin thoughtfully. They were not surprised by Oyabun Obu's request, for they held their deep reverence for the Kishin for a significant reason. All of them were silently grappling with mental health issues. Many among them battled mental problems that stemmed from the monotony of their lives. Some suffered from anxiety, depression, and, most notably, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a haunting consequence of their years immersed in violence and cruelty. They refrained from seeking the help of experts or psychiatrists, convinced that they were cursed, choosing instead to endure their struggles in silence. However, a turning point emerged when an entity delivered them from their torment, a beacon of hope that shone in their lives. Indeed, it was the Kishin video games that rescued them from their afflictions and visibly improved their conditions. This transformative experience led to profound admiration and reverence for Kishin, particularly its founder, the one who had bestowed grace upon them, Shinro Suzuki. Meanwhile, Shin regarded Oyabun Obu with a silent intensity as he posed the question, "Why?" His voice quivered ever so slightly, but the complex atmosphere in the room concealed it from the notice of the high-ranking Yakuza and Oyabun Obu. Oyabun Obu responded with a faint smile upon hearing Shin's inquiry. It's because I grew weary of managing such a complex organization, he admitted, his eyes widening as he continued, I had too many responsibilities to juggle. I was so occupied that I couldn't even find the time to play video games. As a result, my depression worsened significantly. Shin, upon hearing this revelation, found himself momentarily speechless. Chapter 84, Superstar. Kobe, Tokyo. Yamauchi-gumi headquarters. Shin gazed at the man before him, momentarily rendered speechless. Is he really handing over his position so easily? He was profoundly shocked as he struggled to maintain his composed poker face. Based on the information he had, this Yakuza syndicate was the most powerful in Japan. Shin found it difficult to fathom how such an organization could have risen to such prominence under the leadership of someone like this man. Observing Shin's silence, Goto Norio hastily pleaded, Please, Kishin-sama, accept our allegiance. We will obey your every command. Another member chimed in, just appoint our Oyabun, Obu, as a senior advisor. That's correct. He should continue working. Agreed another. Upon hearing this, Oyabun Obu protested, Hey, you guys. Why are you interfering with my resignation? As the conversation continued, a heavy silence enveloped Shin. He couldn't possibly accept leadership within such a criminal Yakuza syndicate. No matter how alluring the offer might be, he couldn't abandon Kishin Company for a mafia organization like this. With these thoughts in mind, Shin hastily interrupted the Yakuza conversation, saying, I apologize, but... Shin paused, locking eyes with Oyabun Obu, who returned his gaze. All eyes were on Shin as he continued, I cannot accept such a proposition. Gathering his courage, he shook his head, firmly declining the offer. The high-ranking Yakuza and Oyabun Obu exchanged glances. Notably, Obu, who had been scrutinizing Shin's eyes, broke into a smile. Everyone, who had not been mentally stable until the advent of video games, exchanged smiles with each other. Obu smiled calmly as he spoke, I had a feeling you'd say that. The high-ranking Yakuza members also turned their gaze towards Shin, offering what seemed like friendly smiles but it's an intimidating expressions instead. As Shin, hearing Obu's words and observing the smiling faces around him, grew perplexed. With furrowed brows, Shin couldn't help but slightly break his poker face and asked, You already knew? Obu, along with the rest, maintained their smiles as they looked at Shin. Obu nodded and explained with a grin, In truth, despite my personal struggles, I understand that I must continue leading the gang. He added with a smile, It was the position bestowed upon me by Oyabun Soma Yamauchi himself, after all. The group nodded in agreement, their smiles unwavering. As Shin observed this, he thought to himself, It seems like they're testing me. With this realization, Shin hesitantly asked, So? You're testing me? Emboldened by the admiration he had seen from them so far, he courageously posed the question. When everyone heard this, they suppressed their laughter out of respect for Kishin. Oyabun Obu smiled and shook his head, saying, No, I'll still offer you the position if you desire it. The group nodded in agreement, as they genuinely wished to be led by a figure like Kishin. Shin nodded and inquired with forced composure, I see. After a moment, he posed another question, but... Will you continue dealing with the Yamada family? Oyabun Obu nodded eagerly and replied with a smile, Certainly, in fact, even if Kishin-sama hadn't met with us, we would still handle the Yamada family. Shin nodded, feeling more at ease. Subsequently, the high-ranking Yakuza and Oyabun Obu bombarded him with questions. What upcoming video games will Kishin release? Can we get an early copy? Will there be more exciting and immersive video games in the future? Shin found himself somewhat helpless as he answered their inquiries one by one. After their meal and a lengthy conversation, it was finally time for Shin to depart. The high-ranking Yakuza and Oyabun Obu appeared melancholic, as though they were being left behind. Shin offered a wry smile. This time, he didn't need to maintain his poker face. After all, he had shared food and drinks with this group of dangerous individuals. Not only that, they had even delved into the topic of video games, which was Shin's passion. As Shin prepared to take his leave, Oyabun Obu remarked, "I'll accompany you out." With that, Oyabun Obu retrieved his suits hanging on the wall and dressed himself. With the added attire, Oyabun Obu appeared every bit the quintessential mafia boss. Initially, Shin intended to decline politely, but upon seeing Oyabun Obu already donning his pants and suit, he refrained. The other high-ranking Yakuza didn't follow Oyabunu's lead, as their suits were in their respective rooms rather than the main hall. While Shin waited, Oyabun Obu slid open the door for him, to which Shin nodded in gratitude. Subsequently, Shin was led by Oyabun Obu through the sprawling Japanese traditional mansion. They conversed as they walked, and upon reaching the Genkan, the entrance hall, both Shin and Oyabun Obu put on their socks and shoes. The attractive woman on the sidelines was taken aback at the sight of Oyabun Obu strolling outside with a young man. Once they stepped outside, Shin and Oyabun Obu noticed subordinates and members of the Yakuza seemingly engaged in a conversation. Upon spotting Shin exiting the mansion, Takuza initially contemplated offering a greeting, but he halted in his tracks when he noticed Shin accompanied by Oyabun Obu. A nearby subordinate, who observed the situation, promptly bowed respectfully to both Shin and Oyabun Obu. Oyabun Obu simply nodded and remarked, "You may leave. I'll see Kishin-sama and Takuza off." The subordinate, taken aback by this unexpected turn, refrained from questioning it and bowed respectfully before walking away. Takuza, who had been composed and calm earlier, grew meek and fell into silence. As they walked outside, the men in black suits were astonished to witness Shin and Takuza being escorted by Oyabun Obu. Shin and Oyabun Obu appeared to have a close rapport, engaging in conversation. The men in black suits promptly paid their respects with respectful bows. Eventually, Shin and Takuza arrived at the Mercedes, where Oyabun Obu nodded to Shin. Surprisingly, Oyabun Obu even opened the car door for Shin, leaving Takuza in a state of shock. "Just give us a call, Kishin-sama, if you ever find yourself in a situation we can assist with," Oyabun Obu said with a warm smile. Shin, growing accustomed to Oyabun Obu's demeanor, nodded appreciatively. Subsequently, Shin entered the car, with Takuza taking the driver's seat door. As Shin's car drove away, Oyabun Obu watched it in the distance, still wearing a content smile. Inside Shin's Mercedes 190E. Takuza, wearing a surprised expression, exclaimed to Shin, "I never expected your acting skills to be Oscar-worthy." He truly hadn't anticipated Shin's proficiency. Shin simply smiled and replied, "Hee, if my business endeavors hadn't panned out, I might have pursued a career in the entertainment industry as an actor." He followed up with a grin, "I could have been a wildly successful superstar by now." Takuza, upon hearing this, chuckled and suddenly recalled something. "Speaking of superstars, there's a rumor that the Suzuki Group has contracted Michael Jackson to promote their products, especially the SES 16-bit, in North America in a few months." Shin, who had been smiling initially, froze and exclaimed, "Really?" Takuza nodded and added, "It's not confirmed, but the possibility is there. After all, Suzuki Music has secured the services of a true superstar." Shin, upon hearing this, fell silent, lost in thought. He hadn't expected the Suzuki Group to be gearing up for entry into the American market when they hadn't even solidified their position in the Japanese or home market yet. Chapter 85, Competitors Video Games. Kishin Headquarters. After Shin successfully aligned himself with the #1 Yakuza syndicate in Japan, he felt that revealing his identity soon wouldn't pose a threat. The potential sabotage or underworld attacks from his family would pale in comparison to the formidable Yakuza syndicate. Perhaps in the near future, he would unveil his true identity once the Game Boy was ready for production. Currently, Myra sat intimately on Shin's lap in the office while they were alone. She asked with concern, nestled in Shin's arms, "Is it truly safe to proceed with our business on Kyushu Island, Fukuoka City?" Shin responded with a reassuring smile, gently running his right hand through her hair. He whispered in her ear, causing her cheeks to flush, "Everything will be fine. Just trust me." Following that, they shared a passionate kiss, eagerly anticipating their upcoming wedding day. However, at this point, Myra had yet to inform her parents due to uncertainty about their potential reaction. As for her university, Shin had generously donated a substantial sum, ensuring that Myra would still be allowed to attend even though she was now with him. The key employees of Kishin, including Myra and Lee Han, harbored concerns about continuing their business in Fukuoka City, especially after the losses they had incurred. They couldn't comprehend why Shin insisted on persisting with their operations there. As they spent several days in a state of worry, they anticipated something similar to previous incidents, where a group of men with black cars had attacked their distribution trucks. However, after several days passed, they hadn't encountered any form of attack, leaving them perplexed. Shin then managed to convince them that nothing untoward would occur, bringing them a sense of relief. During this brief period, numerous aspiring game developers joined Kishin to submit their work. It had been slightly over a week since Kishin had encouraged programmers to transition into game developers, and many of these newcomers had already created video games. Unfortunately, a substantial number of these video games turned out to be of poor quality, resulting in many rejections. Nevertheless, a few managed to succeed. For instance, one game developer successfully created a video game centered around puzzles or chess, capitalizing on the unexplored realm of mind-based video games. Meanwhile, Kinoshita Yoshi's team of programmers pooled their own funds to establish their own company and secure a location. There, they began developing a video game based on Kinoshita Yoshi's concept. While the independent video game developers were still acclimating themselves to the unfamiliar market, Suzuki Trademark Entertainment, initially focused solely on educational learning, made a surprising move by releasing a multitude of video games, some of which were captivating and entertaining. Thousands of Tokyo residents purchased their video games. One of Suzuki's most popular titles was Ninja Master. It featured a ninja character wielding shuriken, capable of scaling walls. This video game even outperformed Tora's top title, the Happy Video Game. Another Suzuki video game was Samurai Lord, which featured an ancient samurai wielding a katana against enemy samurai. These two successful Suzuki video games surpassed Tora's sales for several days, leaving Tora Electronics and Tora VG Entertainment in a state of solemnity. Unlike in the past, President Taro Ikeda found himself unable to voice his complaints to the group of programmers or developers. He had been warned by the chairman that the dozen programmers who had joined Tora VG Entertainment were not ordinary individuals, and thus, he couldn't even vent his frustrations to them. He remained silent but harbored a deep sense of frustration. Meanwhile, Okada Ken, the leader of the Yakuza programmers group, took on the role of the new creative director, while his brother, Okada Ren, assumed the position of narrative designer. They weren't concerned about Tora's financial losses, their primary focus was on developing video games. At present, they had created 2 games soon to be released to the public. In the conference room, Okada Ken, Okada Ren, and the team of video game programmers presented their creations to the higher UPS. The first game they showcased was Rampage Tengu. In this game, a red-faced demon or Tengu wreaked havoc on a city. The gameplay was delightfully straightforward and humorous, featuring the Tengu causing chaos by attacking buildings and other structures in the city. While numerous small mobs attempted to assail the Tengu or the player's in-game character, they were no match for the formidable Tengu. The game also boasted various backgrounds and stages. When the executives in the conference room laid eyes on the game, they nearly erupted in curses, but their outbursts were stifled when they noticed the scars on Okada-ken's face. In fact, it wasn't just Okada-ken, many of the newly recruited programmers exhibited unconventional appearances. The executives and the president were all silently echoing the same thought: why did we allow such individuals into the company? Their smiles seemed forced as they reluctantly nodded in response to the presentation of the first video game. Then, Okada-ken introduced their second creation, saying, "Look, we've also crafted a new video game destined for fame." The projection displayed the second video game, titled Dramatic Mahjong. Yes, you read it right. The Yakuza programmers or game developers had indeed developed a gambling video game. The expressions of the executives and President Taro became noticeably grim. Indeed, they had learned their lesson from the Odyssey of Nurin Rage, and now, these new video game developers had ventured into the realm of gambling games. But wasn't this a recipe for trouble? While it might be permissible to release gambling video games under the 0C rating, suitable for ages up to 15 years old, they harbored doubts about its profitability. After all, their primary target audience had always been children and young people. As for Rampage Tengu, it was slated for a B rating, allowing access to 12-year-olds, which seemed acceptable. However, they remained skeptical about its potential for profit. After all, it was undeniably an unusual video game. But did they really have a choice? This marked the first time when mere employees held more sway than they did, with the chairman himself cautioning them against interfering with the newly joined programmers. Okada-ken couldn't help but chuckle as he declared, "Very well. Release this video game tomorrow." The executives and the president were left momentarily speechless upon hearing this. One of the executives interjected, "It's still in production, releasing it so quickly is practically impossible." Okada-ken snorted in response and retorted, "Then release it when it's ready." His shout left the executives and the president in silence. Their exchange left the executives and the president exchanging disheartened glances. A week later, Suzuki Video Games appeared to be gaining dominance over Tora, and their sights were set on Kishin's position as the #1 company in the Japanese video game industry. While the video game developers at Suzuki believed Tora was already a lost cause, Tora VG Entertainment mounted a counter-offensive by releasing 2 new video games. Many loyal to RA supporters rushed to buy these games, but some of them would soon face unexpected challenges. Chapter 86, Kishin's Downfall? Tokyo. Many young people flocked to stores and malls in Tokyo to purchase Tora's 2 new video games. However, some youngsters, aged 11 or 10 and below, were disappointed to discover that they weren't allowed to buy Tora's latest releases. A determined 10-year-old boy confronted the salesman, saying, "What's the matter? I wanted to buy these video games. Why won't you let me?" The salesman appeared quite helpless as he responded, "I sincerely apologize, but the Rampage Tengu video game is rated B." The boy snorted in frustration and hurriedly retorted, "Rated what? This is nonsense. I just wanted to buy the video games I saw on TV." Once again, the salesman shook his head in helplessness and explained, "I'm truly sorry, kid. Rated B means it's only suitable for ages 12 and up," addressing the elementary student. The elementary boy expressed his frustration with a disdainful snort and remarked, "Tisk. If you don't want to sell, that's fine. I can just go to Suzuki, or even better, Kishin." With a dismissive huff, he turned and walked away. Similar situations were unfolding in stores and malls across Tokyo. Many desired to purchase Dramatic Mahjong, but young individuals under the age of 15 were barred from doing so. These restrictions left numerous Tora customers disheartened, and they vented their frustration by cursing Tora for its strict policies. However, those who understood why Tora implemented these rules recognized that the company had little choice but to enforce them due to the sensitivity of their content. Upon witnessing this, Suzuki fans breathed a sigh of relief, believing that Tora's video games wouldn't pose much competition. Suzuki seemed poised to maintain its dominance, especially since Kishin had been silent for weeks, releasing only a handful of independent video games. The Suzuki fans appeared to be correct, as Tora's new video game sales numbered only 3,000 to 7,000, falling far short and not even reaching the daily sales of the dwindling Happy video game. Meanwhile, a young man named Uehara Hiro had just purchased Tora's 2 new video games. He eagerly inserted the video game called Dramatic Mahjong. The gameplay revolved around gambling, with players engaging in mahjong on a game board with tiles. The effects were noticeably exaggerated. Comic-style text would appear when Hiro completed certain actions, and dramatic text would exclaim "Sumo." Hiro played for a while but quickly grew bored. Gambling wasn't his forte, and he lacked knowledge of the rules. He was simply testing the gameplay for fun, but it failed to captivate him. So, he halted the video game and removed it from the cartridge slot, replacing it with Rampage Tengu. The Tora 16-bit console and the game both booted up. The screen displayed the imposing red Tengu's face, and Hiro was pleasantly surprised to find that the graphics had improved. As he began the game, a peculiar sound theme played, and his in-game character transformed into the formidable face of the Tengu with its elongated nose, shooting fireballs in all directions. While the gameplay still bore some resemblance to Kishin's Super Mario Bros., this video game possessed a unique charm. Hordes of tiny enemies swarmed the massive, flying face of the Tengu with its long nose, but Hiro skillfully evaded them or relentlessly attacked. To be honest, the gameplay lacked the complexity of Super Mario Bros. Or The Legend of Zelda. It was sheer chaos and mindless combat against the imposing red-faced Tengu. Whether in cityscapes or underwater settings, the Tengu relentlessly attacked tiny fish without a hint of concern. This is such a simple video game. But Hiro remarked thoughtfully as he continued to play, adding with a smile, "It's oddly satisfying." Indeed, rather than growing frustrated, Hiro found the video game to be a stress reliever. High school had brought its fair share of stress, and this game served as his much-needed escape. The initial and subsequent sales of Tora's 2 new video games were disappointing, to say the least. Within just a few days, Suzuki Trademark Entertainment even took a jab at Tora in their advertisements. With the narrator proclaiming, "Our video games are nothing like Tora-san's." Tora-san, or, a reference to a Japanese comedian, was used as a playful mockery. When people in the Kanto region saw and heard this advertisement, they couldn't help but chuckle and let out faint laughter. President Taro Ikeda, on the other hand, clenched his lips in frustration upon witnessing the ad. However, just when Suzuki and its fans believed that Tora's 2 new video games were destined to flop, something remarkable happened. In a matter of days, although initially selling only a few thousand copies with a slight uptick in recent days, Tora's video game, Rampage Tengu, suddenly surged in sales, even surpassing the sales of some Suzuki video games. What's more, some adults who had developed an interest in video games also joined the fray, opting to play gambling games by purchasing Tora's new video games. Given Japan's penchant for gambling, this trend took hold. These sudden turn of events left Suzuki and its fans utterly speechless. While Kishin remained the market leader, the spotlight in the Kanto region was gradually shifting towards its 2 competitors, Tora and Suzuki. Consequently, Kishin began to experience a gradual decline in sales. Fortunately, Kishin was steadily expanding its presence throughout Japan. Starting in the Kyushu region, the company gradually extended its reach to include Hokkaido, Tohoku, Chubu, Kyushu, and even Okinawa, thanks to the assistance of the Yamauchi-gumi. These expansions contributed to Kishin's net worth soaring into the tens of billions, reaching a total of 48 billion yen. Kishin's strategic focus on other significant regions in Japan was likely the reason why the Kanto region had started shifting its attention to emerging competitors, thanks to their new video game releases. Many loyal Kishin fans began to feel concerned. While Kishin did release some independent video games, they fell short of the quality of Kishin's original creations. There was growing anxiety that Kishin might be losing its initial creativity and relying too heavily on independent games, a sentiment shared by many Tora and Suzuki fans. Speculations were rife about the potential downfall of the king who hadn't even reigned for a year. As of mid-November, there was still no word from Kishin, leaving people in the dark. Some higher UPS at Suzuki Trademark Entertainment were already assuming they would dominate the video game market. To them, Kishin seemed like a lost cause. However, they couldn't have been more mistaken, as Kishin was gearing up to release a slew of exciting video games simultaneously in early December. For those interested in the gameplay of Rampage Tengu, search for Aburen-ro Tengu. Damn it, I didn't expect this novel to reach the top 5. Thank you for the support. Chapter 87, Kishin's new video games released. Kishin Headquarters, Kishin Trademark Department. Shin gazed at his company's group of video game developers, wearing a smile. On the whiteboard, the images of the new video games were displayed via a projector. The first image featured a 2D pixelated character in a space suit, wielding a vibrant gun. The title read Metroid, and the themes portrayed a dark, starry sky, evoking a space-themed video game. Tora and Suzuki might have underestimated us. But with this first wave of video games we're about to release, let's see if they can keep up. Proclaimed Koga Ryo, the creative director of the video game, as he proudly added, after all, it was directed and written based on the young boss's vision. The game developers looked at the creative director in speechless astonishment. He certainly knows how to flatter, echoed in the minds of most of them. Shin simply responded with a smile. They will lead with the release of Metroid as the opening salvo, building anticipation and excitement. Subsequently, after the buzz surrounding Metroid has reached its peak, they will gradually introduce their new video games. The intention is to make their rivals, Tora and Suzuki, believe that Kishin has exhausted its offerings with Metroid. Then, taking them by surprise, they will unveil video games that achieved fame in Shin's previous life. Shin held great admiration for Gunpei Yakoi's work on Metroid. December 5, 1990. Tokyo. The chill of winter was already in the air, prompting everyone to don jackets and scarves for warmth. Some children and young adults sported Kishin Super Mario Bros. Jackets, a trend that had swept through Tokyo thanks to the widespread popularity of video games. With the cold weather outside, most people opted to stay snug indoors beneath their kotetsu tables. In the cozy comfort of their homes, they indulged in snacks while watching television. It happened to be the concluding episode of The Legend of Zelda. After Link valiantly battled numerous monsters and bosses, it seemed he was on the verge of rescuing the princess. However, just as viewers anticipated the princess's rescue, Link encountered one of Ganon's high-ranking subordinates. Yet, as Link engaged in combat with this formidable adversary, the credits abruptly rolled. A young man expressed his disappointment, exclaiming, "Really? It's ending already?" Many of those watching shared his disappointment, with a significant portion being avid Kishin fans. Just as they were on the verge of switching off their television, a Kishin advertisement suddenly seized their attention. It featured a cosmic backdrop, where sudden explosions erupted. A figure in a spacesuit tumbled through the air and landed gracefully on a colossal yellow video game cartridge bearing the title Metroid. "Let's welcome, Metroid," declared the narrator as the scene transitioned from a realistic galaxy to the pixelated world of the video game. The advertisement showcased Metroid gameplay, while the announcer elaborated, "You'll combat alien monsters with your Fami computer. Take aim and fire." The spacesuit-clad character was depicted skillfully dispatching creatures with a futuristic space gun. The character executed stylish jumps and nimble rolls on the ground. "Now, unleash your gaming prowess." Following this advertisement, a palpable wave of excitement swept through the viewers in the Kanto region. Tokyo. On the very first day of the advertisement's release, numerous residents of Tokyo eagerly left their homes to acquire Metroid. Despite the chilly weather, a multitude of people, predominantly young individuals, formed long queues at various stores and malls throughout Tokyo. Since Kishin's video game, Metroid, was family-friendly, even parents flocked to purchase it for their children. As a result, the estimated sales of Metroid across Japan surged to 20,000 units in just a single day. The fervor for Kishin's video games remained unabated on the second day of its release, underscoring the public's longing for Kishin's video games, which had been absent from the market for an extended period. Even Robert Johnson, who had returned to Japan for business after several months, found himself in line alongside countless others. Robert worked in international consulting, which often took him abroad for business. During his free hours, he would explore various places. This time, during his leisure time, he invited his friend, Nick Conley, also an international consultant, to experience the captivating world of Japanese video games. The tall Nick Conley raised an eyebrow as he surveyed the lengthy line and remarked, "Dude, seriously? I mean, I know Super Mario Bros. Was a blast when we played it on your console, but waiting in this endless line." Robert chuckled and replied, "It's Kishin's video games. It's worth the wait." Nick Conley pouted and said, "I get it, The Legend of Zelda was incredible, but I didn't realize you were becoming such a loyal fan of a Japanese company." Robert smiled and said, "It's not just for me, I'm also getting this video game from Japan for my child." Nick Conley furrowed his brows and complained, "It's freezing out here." After half an hour of waiting, they finally obtained their video games. Robert purchased Donkey Kong, Duck Hunt, and Metroid, while Nick Conley made the same choices without a care. After purchasing their video games, they returned to Robert's rented apartment. Nick Conley snorted as he examined the cover of Metroid and remarked, "I have a hunch that this video game will be a flop." Robert frowned in response and inquired, "Why do you think that?" With unwavering confidence, Nick Conley replied, "Remember Atari's colossal flop, E.T. the Extraterrestrial? Metroid feels eerily similar to it. I mean, they both delve into space and aliens or something." Robert shook his head, chuckling at his friend's assumptions, and said, "I've seen the advertisement. Just from that preview, I can tell it's going to be a really impressive video game." Nick Conley raised his hands in resignation and said, "Well, it's your call, dude." He paused, adding with a chuckle, "Don't say I didn't warn you, higher expectations often lead to greater disappointments." Robert smiled at Nick Conley's words as he inserted the Metroid video game cartridge into the Famicom console. "This is where we'll find out if it's any good," Robert said, looking at the powered-up TV and Famicom. Nick Conley also gazed at the TV as the video game finally began. The theme music played, and the blue title Metroid appeared. He commented in a somewhat bored tone, "Oh, it's starting." Robert nodded and initiated the video game. A message appeared on the screen, displaying, "Emergency order, defeat the Metroid of the planet Zebeth and destroy the Mother Brain, the mechanical life vein. Galaxy Federal Police M510. Robert and Nick, not being Japanese, had some difficulty reading it, but they grasped the gist. The Metroid video game officially began, revealing Robert's in-game character, a figure in a spacesuit armed with a high-tech space gun. As he controlled his character, they encountered crawling monsters on the ground and walls. Robert dispatched them with his gun and skillfully maneuvered his character to roll swiftly through narrow rock passages. Nick Conley watched with growing interest and remarked, "This game is indeed intriguing." Robert chuckled but remained focused on playing as he replied, "Then get your own Famicom." Nick Conley exclaimed, "What do you mean, dude? I thought we were sharing your Famicom." Robert smiled and retorted, "Well, you can't play on this while I'm enjoying my Metroid. Just buy your own Famicom console." Nick Conley snorted, "You're no fun." Many other players who purchased the Metroid video game were also captivated by its space-themed adventure. Meanwhile, the ongoing rivalry between Tora and Suzuki for the second place in the market drew its attention to Kishin. Chapter 88, Metroid Surprising Ending. Suzuki Electronics. Conference room. In a conference room, the executives and President Nico Tabata gazed at the television, which was displaying Metroid. The game's theme revolved around space and alien creatures, and while the gameplay was impressive, those in the room seemed unfazed by the video game. In contrast to Kishin's Metroid, Suzuki Video Games offered Ninja Master and Samurai Lord. Both of these titles were steeped in Japanese culture and history, explaining why they had been popular choices among consumers. This underscored Suzuki's unique approach to game development. Nico Tabata observed Metroid and commented, "It appears that Kishin has invested a considerable effort into this one." Other executives nodded in agreement, and one of them remarked with relief, "It's reassuring, unlike the past when Kishin was consistently churning out hit games like Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong, and The Legend of Zelda. They've only released one game, Metroid, in several weeks. It seems this will be their final release this year." The executives and the president concurred, and one of them added, "Indeed, that seems to be the case. Kishin appears to be exercising more caution and avoiding frequent, hasty game releases." Meanwhile, Tora shared the same sentiment. Tora headquarters. Conference room. Following their viewing and gameplay experience with Metroid, Tora's executives and President Taro Ikeda arrived at a similar conclusion as Suzuki. One of the executives commented, "Kishin is already the leading player in the Japanese video game industry, so I believe they've made a wise decision." Another executive chimed in with a laugh, "Haha, if I were the owner of Kishin, after such a rapid ascent from an estimated hundreds of thousands to billions, I'd certainly exercise caution too." President Taro Ikeda smiled and commented, "I actually think it would have been better for Kishin to continue their previous strategy of releasing many video games consistently." Seeing the executive's puzzled expressions, he added with a chuckle, "After all, now that they're the undisputed leaders in the video game industry, if they were to release numerous games, most of which turned out to be failures except for Metroid, it might shake the perception of invincibility that Kishin holds in the hearts of their loyal fans." Upon hearing President Taro Ikeda's remarks, all the executives burst into laughter. Little did they know that their joy would soon turn to concern, as Metroid harbored a hidden secret attack. Tokyo, Minato Ward. In the Sawa residence. A few days had passed since the release of Metroid. In the Sawa residence, a young man named Sawa Arita was a devoted video game enthusiast. Despite still being in high school, he was more of a bookworm, often the target of ridicule by his fellow students, particularly by a group of bullies. Since he wore glasses, everyone at school would often tease him with nicknames like Four Eyes and similar taunts. Arita had always been a bookworm, engrossed in his studies, until the unexpected surge in popularity of video games, particularly in the affluent wards of Tokyo. Remarkably, Arita, once known as a bookworm, underwent a transformation into a passionate gamer. He played Super Mario Bros. So extensively that he unearthed various hidden tricks within the game. Thanks to his in-depth knowledge of video games, word spread among the students at his school, and Arita became the go-to authority on video games. Even the bullies who had once targeted him sought his advice. Video games provided him with an overwhelming sense of achievement. And now, after a long wait, Kishin had released their latest video game, Metroid. Arita had played Metroid to completion and had finished it quite some time ago. Yet, he still had a burning desire to replay it. Why? It was simple, it was Kishin, after all. Arita had great confidence in Kishin, especially given the effort they put into incorporating various secret tricks into games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, which featured hidden caves and underground secrets. Yesterday, he had completed Metroid after hours of gameplay, but Arita's gamer instincts told him he was missing something. He hastily turned on the television, inserted the Metroid cartridge into the Famicom, and watched as the Kishin logo appeared on the screen. After the Metroid title flashed, he eagerly started the game once more. This time, he adeptly manipulated the controller, and as he continued to play, one thing became abundantly clear: the challenge was real. On occasion, many of his classmates who also played Metroid would vent their frustration toward Kishin for not providing any in-game guidance. However, individuals like Arita saw this as a positive aspect, as it presented them with a genuine challenge. Things progressed to the point where he and his fellow video game enthusiast classmates formed a group. One of them had even painstakingly created a detailed map of the game. This time, Arita borrowed it from his newfound friend, a fellow classmate, to serve as his guide while playing. Thanks to this map, he managed to uncover hidden paths and shortcuts within the game. Arita was no stranger to speedrunning. He had previously attempted to complete Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda in under an hour. Initially, when he started playing Metroid, it seemed easier than Super Mario Bros. Or The Legend of Zelda, but he quickly realized he was sorely mistaken. The enemies were formidable, his shooting range was limited to just a few feet, and his character, Samus Aran, responded with minimal health. It was undeniably more challenging than Arita and his avid video game-loving classmates had anticipated. That's why, in such cases, they had banded together to tackle the formidable challenge presented by the video game Metroid. After several hours of determined gameplay, Arita successfully completed the game, and a message appeared on the screen with Samus Aran standing tall. "Great! You've fulfilled your mission. It will restore peace in space. But, it may be threatened by other Metroids. Pray for true peace in space." As Arita initially felt disappointed that his replay had not revealed much, he suddenly noticed something that seized his attention. Samus Aran, the figure in the space suit, removed his helmet, causing Arita's eyes to widen in astonishment. The spacesuit-clad figure was none other than a woman. Her hair flowed as she gracefully removed her helmet. "Wait!" Arita exclaimed, clutching his chest, "Isn't this a different ending from what I saw before?" His shout echoed throughout the house. His mother's voice could be heard from downstairs, "Arita! Why are you so loud?" But Arita paid no heed and approached the television screen, confirming that he wasn't imagining things. After a long while, he shouted, "It's real! I have to share this with my friends." Arita was elated at the thought that he might be the first and only one to have discovered this revelation. However, unbeknownst to him, other players in various parts of Tokyo and across Japan had also stumbled upon this surprising ending, and some had discovered it even before Sawa Arita. This discovery ignited a buzz within the video game community in Tokyo, whether they were Tora or Suzuki supporters, as they eagerly discussed the challenging video game known as Metroid. Chapter 89, Kishin's Two Surprising Announcements. Tokyo. In Tokyo, a group of young friends engaged in an animated discussion about the Metroid video game. "Hey, did any of you catch the ending of Metroid?" inquired Ike Dai, who was an enthusiast of Kishin, Tora, and Suzuki video games, as they strolled along the sidewalk. Tora's supporter among them responded with a hint of disdain, "Oh, that challenging game? I seriously contemplated quitting while playing." Suzuki's fan nodded in agreement, stating, "Absolutely. That video game is incredibly tough and quite intricate. Yet, why does Kishin assume we can figure it out without any instructions?" added the Tora supporter. Ike Dai felt that his friends were somewhat narrow-minded, shaking his head as he said, "I respectfully disagree with your opinions. For me, it's precisely because Metroid is challenging, complex, and demanding that I adore it." The Tora supporter snickered, suggesting, "Dai, you're just a Kishin fanatic, aren't you?" The Suzuki fan joined in, taunting, "Dai, give Ninja Master a try sometime." The Tora supporter chimed in, "And Rampage Tengu is an absolute blast, Dai, you should try it," he said with a grin. Ike Dai smiled wryly and responded, "Let me tell you guys, I've already played those games, and Metroid is in a league of its own compared to those straightforward ones." His two friends fell into silence at that point. Ike Dai continued with enthusiasm, "Let me tell you, guys. Metroid offers some truly unexpected surprises, especially with its ending. His two friends remained puzzled by this statement. The Tora supporter, who had only played Metroid briefly, inquired, "I've only played Metroid for a short time. What's so surprising about the ending?" Ikedi couldn't help but giggle as he observed his friend's confusion. He replied with a proud gleam in his eyes, "You wouldn't believe it. If you make it to the end of Metroid, you'll discover just how fascinating the ending can be." The Suzuki fan frowned and pressed further, asking, "What makes the ending of Metroid so interesting?" Ikedi wore a mysterious smile and stated, "You'll find out when you play the game." He paused, noticing the curiosity in his friend's eyes, and added, "I can only say that Metroid offers multiple endings, and they are quite surprising." The Tora supporter and Suzuki fan exchanged dismayed glances. It seemed they needed to experience the Metroid video game for themselves to truly understand its various endings, as Ikedi's words had ignited their curiosity. The video game Metroid had become a major talking point not only in Tokyo but also in various regions across Japan. Its popularity was such that Metroid saw a staggering increase in sales, with 40,000 copies sold in a single day. Notably, other Kishin video games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda also enjoyed a significant boost in sales, while Tora and Suzuki video games experienced an all-time low in sales. This turn of events left them incredulous. With Kishin having released just one game, Metroid, their previously intense rivalry seemed comical now. In a Kishin advertisement, the two rival companies were playfully referenced, with a humorous scene. A ringing telephone was answered by a man, a minor celebrity played the role of a father, saying, "Suzuki Mushi, bug?" Ah, it was Tora-san. This light-hearted mockery drew laughter from viewers, especially since Kishin could now afford to advertise on major broadcasting channels like TBS, Nippon TV, and NHK. Upon seeing this, one of the Suzuki executives exclaimed, "Let's make sure that actor never gets another opportunity in the entertainment industry." Yet, our connections run deeper than Kishin. "He picked the wrong side," nodded another executive in agreement. Tora followed a similar approach, effectively closing doors for the small-time actor within the entertainment industry. However, what they didn't know was that the actor had anticipated this move and had already requested a substantial sum from Kishin. His plan was to launch a small street food business in bustling tourist spots. December 10, 1990. Japan, Tokyo. Just when everyone believed that the phenomenal Metroid video game marked Kishin's final contribution to the gaming world, and the buzz surrounding Kishin's dominance in the gaming community and industry was starting to cool down, Kishin surprised everyone by making two significant announcements. The first announcement was that Kishin would be releasing a new video game on December 11, 1990. This news sent ripples of concern through Tora and Suzuki, along with their devoted fan bases. However, the most astonishing news wasn't directed towards their two competitors. Indeed, it was aimed squarely at the entertainment industry itself. Kishin Entertainment had just made a groundbreaking announcement. They were in the process of producing a new anime set to release in a few months. However, the exact release date was yet to be announced. When this news reached the ears of viewers, particularly those who were fans of The Legend of Zelda anime, many experienced a mix of disappointment due to the lengthy wait and anticipation for what was to come. Many initially believed it might be the highly awaited Season 2 of The Legend of Zelda. However, their hopes were dashed as the creative director, Hikaru, clarified during the press conference, "No, it's not the Season 2 of The Legend of Zelda, that's for certain." A reporter inquired, "Really? The Legend of Zelda was a tremendously successful series. Why didn't Kishin continue with it?" Ishiji Murakami, the studio director, responded with a chuckle, "Hehe, we did consider that option, but the young owner of Kishin had a different vision, and he wanted to create a brand new anime." The reporter, surprised, asked, "Oh? So, it was the mysterious young owner of Kishin who made this decision?" Is it a directive from Kishin's parent company? Other reporters became increasingly intrigued, hastily jotting down notes as they prepared to delve into the story further. Ishiji Murakami nodded and playfully complained, "Yet, whether we like it or not, the young owner of Kishin actually led the animation for The Legend of Zelda. That's why we have faith in his decisions," he concluded with a smile. He continued with fervor, "Moreover, I believe the anime written by the young owner of Kishin will be so incredible that it will reshape the anime industry." A TBS female reporter gasped in astonishment and asked, "Wow, really? That's quite a bold statement. Can you share any details about the type of anime it will be?" Studio director Ishiji Murakami and creative director Hikaru exchanged knowing glances, both wearing smiles. Indeed, according to the wealthy young owner, Shinro Suzuki, creating hype was essential. More hype meant more popularity for their anime, along with heightened anticipation and expectations. Ishiji Murakami then teased, "I wouldn't want to give away too much, but I can say it will surely be adored by pet lovers. Hee," and he ended with a cheerful laugh. "Pet lovers?" the male NHK reporter said, clearly puzzled, as he glanced at his fellow reporters. He followed up with a question, "You mentioned that it will reshape the anime industry. How confident are you about that?" Ishiji Murakami smiled and chuckled, saying, "The young boss was certainly confident enough." Creative director Hikaru nodded and added with a grin, "After all, the young boss acquired 3 additional animation studios and invested a substantial amount of money to collaborate on this anime." He continued with unwavering confidence, "That fact alone should underscore just how confident both we and the young boss are, don't you think?" The journalists and reporters exchanged perplexed glances. Meanwhile, The Legend of Zelda fans couldn't hide their profound disappointment. Conversely, Suzuki and Tora, who had recently been stressed due to Kishin's new video game Metroid and their own upcoming releases, reveled in Kishin's audacious and ambitious move. They were pleased that Kishin had halted production on the successful anime The Legend of Zelda. Their anticipation was that Kishin's lofty ambitions, combined with the release of a new video game, would lead to a spectacular failure, making it difficult for Kishin to re-enter the entertainment industry. The acquisition of several animation studios was seen as a reckless financial loss. Chapter 90, Kishin's new releases. December 11, 1990. During this time, anticipation ran high for the release of 2 new Kishin video games. One was Kid Icarus, while the other was Final Fantasy. Players eagerly flocked to stores and malls like hungry piranhas sensing their prey. Tora and Suzuki, the 2 competitors, had already solemnly predicted this massive turnout. Sawa Arata and his group of video game-loving friends joined in the excitement, purchasing both games and chatting enthusiastically. Sawa Arata asked cheerfully, "Did you reach any interesting endings in Metroid? Discovering different endings was so much fun." "Yeah, I did," his friend replied, lowering his voice to avoid attracting attention. "I got the ending where Samus Aran was wearing a sexy pink suit." Their friends giggled, and Sawa Arata smiled, saying, "According to the story manual, it's called the Justin Bailey suit." One of his friends nodded and added, "I checked it out too, and Kishin Merchandise is even selling that suit." Another friend pondered, "I wonder how it would look on a real girl." The group fell into thoughtful silence. Most of them were devoted nerds, especially when it came to video games. Some even went as far as creating their own maps for The Legend of Zelda or Metroid. They even documented their gaming tips and tricks in a video game research notebook, which they occasionally shared with their more casual gamer classmates. Their hobbies drew criticism from the teachers at school, who often warned, "Don't play too many video games, or you'll end up like those guys," referring to Sawa Arata's group of friends. Nevertheless, they proceeded to purchase their copies of Kid Icarus and Final Fantasy. Like Metroid, both of these video games came with story manuals written in Japanese. These 2 video games appeared to be rather complex, the sort that Tora and Suzuki's fans might disapprove of. After purchasing their games, they all gathered at their secret hideout. Yes, these guys had rented a place specifically for their gaming adventures. Here, they had their own television and video game setup, the hub for their strategic gaming discussions. Sawa Arata, the group's leader, took the controller first. He inserted Final Fantasy, and the game began with the words, "The world is veiled in darkness. The wind ceases, the sea rages, and the earth begins to rot. The people wait, their only hope, a prophecy. When the world is in darkness, 4 warriors will come." Against a blue background. The group paid close attention to this message and kept it in mind. Sawa Arata entered his name, and the game started. To their surprise, there was a class selection screen offering warrior, thief, monk, and mage. Sawa Arata and his friends exchanged surprised glances, and then Sawa Arata chose to begin as a warrior. The game commenced, and, to their astonishment, the gameplay resembled The Legend of Zelda, but it was also distinct. It all began as the warrior character respawned outside the castle. Unlike The Legend of Zelda, in Final Fantasy, they could interact with non-playable characters, explore the map, and engage in conversations with NPCs. There was a church and other interesting elements in the game. Sawa Arata and his friends were intrigued by this new style of gameplay, and they discussed it for a while. When Sawa Arata guided his character towards a cluster of trees, they encountered enemies. Surprisingly, the 4 characters that Sawa Arata hadn't chosen also appeared on the screen, each one joining the battle against the monsters. This type of gameplay truly captivated Sawa Arata and his friends. It was more technical, resembling The Legend of Zelda and Metroid in terms of equipment acquisition and leveling up. After playing the game for about an hour, Sawa Arata became so engrossed in the gameplay that he momentarily forgot they had another video game to try. One of his friends reminded him, saying, "Hey, it's about time we give Kid Icarus a shot." "Yeah, we've been curious about what that video game has to offer," another friend chimed in. This snapped Sawa Arata out of his gaming trance, and he nodded hastily, saying, "Right, I'll save the game first." He saved the progress and removed the Final Fantasy cartridge from the slot. Then, he inserted the Kid Icarus cartridge into the slot, and as the video game booted up, the title Kid Icarus appeared on the screen. When Sawa Arata began the game, he entered his name, but this time, there was no introductory message. This surprised the group, and one of them mentioned, according to the story manual, Kid Icarus isn't the name of the in-game character. His name is Pit, while holding the story manual. Everyone fell into a momentary silence, but they weren't overly shocked. After all, Kishin had a history of using different in-game character names compared to the game titles, as seen in The Legend of Zelda and Metroid, except for Super Mario Bros. As the game began, Sawa Arata assumed control of his character, who attacked by shooting arrows from a bow. Whenever he defeated enemies, hearts would appear, while some foes dropped different items. The group took note of this, and Sawa Arata couldn't help but draw parallels between these hearts and the orbs in Metroid. The gameplay was intriguing, resembling Metroid yet possessing its own unique charm. However, as Sawa Arata delved deeper into the game, its complexity and difficulty became increasingly evident. It was surprisingly easy to meet one's demise, even for Sawa Arata, the dedicated video game addict. Fortunately, it turned out that the hearts represented a life bar. As long as Sawa Arata collected them, he remained safe, or so he initially believed. The group was in for a surprise as they played further. They discovered that the hearts served as currency. Sawa Arata and his friends exchanged glances and deliberated on which items to purchase. Once they reached a decision, Sawa Arata bought an item, which significantly reduced his heart count. They continued to play, and when Sawa Arata entered a particular area, he found himself overwhelmed by enemies, resulting in a game over message appearing on the screen, declaring, "I'm finished." Everyone gazed in dismay, and one of them cursed, "Shinro and Sony is toying with us." Yet, How can he design a game with no instructions? Sawa Arata couldn't help but agree. At this point, this video game seemed more baffling than Metroid, which was, at the very least, well crafted. I've been a devout follower of Shinro and Sony for a long time, but this Kid Icarus video game of his is unquestionably the most challenging. Sawa Arata declared indignantly, his eyes burning with determination. Yet, now I'm all fired up. Despite its difficulty, they all agreed that it was the most intriguing game they'd encountered, so instead of complaining, they resolved to compile tips and tricks for it. One of their friends, Fukuda Hideo, a former thug, asked in confusion, "Who is Shinro and Sony?" The entire group cast puzzled glances at Fukuda Hideo. Sawa Arata sighed disappointingly and said, "Seriously? You really didn't know?" Another friend chimed in, "You've been with us for a few weeks, and you didn't know who Shinro and Sony is?" Fukuda Hideo felt the corner of his mouth twitch and admitted, "No." Sawa Arata rushed to say, "You've got to be kidding me." That name practically dominated the ending credits. Yet, almost all the names in the Super Mario Bros. Ending were Shinro and Sony and some were Myra Sakura, another friend added. Sawa Arata nodded and continued, "Exactly. He's said to be the young founder and co-founder of Kishin." His friends nodded in agreement, and one said, "Seriously, Hideo? How could you not know that? Almost everyone I know is aware of it." Fukuda Hideo could only remain silent in embarrassment. Then, Sawa Arata spoke up with determination, "Anyway, we'll unravel the mysteries of this Kid Icarus video game, and will become a guiding light for those who are lost in the darkness," he proclaimed dramatically. The entire group nodded in agreement. Suddenly, Fukuda Hideo had a brilliant idea. His eyes widened as if struck by lightning, and he thought, "This is a way to redeem myself." He hurriedly suggested, "Yeah, and we can create our own articles about our research on video games, especially the challenging ones like Metroid, Final Fantasy, and Kid Icarus. Then, we can sell them to a publisher. We could get rich." The group stared at Fukuda Hideo in astonishment. One of them wanted to berate him for being ridiculous but held back, realizing that it was actually a great idea. "Great idea!" Sawa Arata exclaimed with a smile and said, "We'll be making money while doing what we love." He grew increasingly excited as he added, "We'll prove to our teachers that we're not wasting our time." Everyone in the group joined in the excitement, exclaiming, "Yeah!" Chapter 91, Independent Video Games. Suzuki and Tora had hoped and prayed that Kishin's new video games wouldn't succeed. Their prayers seemed to be answered by the Most High when one of Kishin's released games, Kid Icarus, faced heavy criticism not only in Tokyo but also in various parts of Japan. Tokyo, Japan. In different corners of Tokyo, the Kishin video game Kid Icarus received harsh criticism. In a particular arcade, several players gathered to discuss their thoughts. "I can accept that Metroid was challenging, but at least it was consistently playable. Kid Icarus was insanely difficult," one player said with disappointment. Another player nodded in agreement, adding, "I've always admired the work of the young founders so far, but Kid Icarus took difficulty to a whole new level." The young founder was the title earned by Shinro Suzuki. As the popularity of video games continued to rise, whether it was Kishin, Tora, or Suzuki fans, it was undeniable that many people were eager to uncover his true identity. In a particular bar, a gathering of Yakuza underlings engaged in a discussion, with one burly man exclaiming in frustration as an attractive woman stood by his side, "Damn it! I broke my Famicom because of how insanely difficult it is. Ha ha ha! You can't be serious." Sato Nakamura chuckled and added, "If the higher UPS find out about your sins, they might just cut off your finger." Ha ha ha! The laughter in the room grew even louder. Meanwhile, amidst the dominance of Kishin's video games in the public eye, in a specific studio, Kinashi Yoshi and his team had finally completed their independent video game. This time, Kinoshita Yoshi refrained from incorporating excessive dark elements and instead created a video game inspired by zombie films. Indeed, his video game was named Zombie Slayer. It revolved around a character who dispatched zombies with a firearm. Players could acquire various equipment or upgrade their firearms by collecting red orbs or essence. The in-game character sported a green armored suit, and the gameplay paid homage to the classics that paved the way, such as Super Mario Bros. At this point, Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends had already visited the Kishin headquarters to submit their video game. They all wore confident expressions, firmly believing that their video game would sail through the approval process without any suspense. And indeed, after a thorough review by the team of assessors, it was given the green light. Even Shin, who had learned about the game style from his employees, couldn't help but smile. It was proof that there were promising independent video game developers out there. Upon receiving the approval, Kinoshita Yoshi and his friend were elatedly surprised, despite their initial confidence in acceptance. They decided to christen their company Kuma Games, with Kuma translating to bear in English. Kinoshita Yoshi chose this name deliberately, as the bear symbolized strength and power, surpassing even the tiger or tora in Japanese. This choice was their way of seeking retribution against Tora Corporation. Following the approval of the video game Zombie Slayer, discussions ensued between Kishin's employees and Kinoshita and his friends regarding the contract. Kishin exhibited generosity by offering a relatively modest royalty fee. This gesture exemplified Kishin's commitment to supporting independent video game developers. After thorough contract negotiations, Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends ultimately agreed to Kishin's terms, and the production of their video game was scheduled to commence in the near future. Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends were overflowing with excitement as their first video game neared its impending release. Several days had passed since the buzz surrounding Kishin's two video games, and Christmas was fast approaching. It turned out that Kid Icarus had the worst sales performance, but fortunately, Final Fantasy was well received by many players. Numerous independent video games, including those that Tora and Suzuki had previously overlooked, began to capture the attention of a broad audience. One standout among them was Zombie Slayer, which Kishin vigorously promoted through advertising. A young man purchased the game with a hint of skepticism. He was unsure whether it would turn out to be another lackluster independent video game, as was often expected, but he decided to take a chance when he noticed Kishin endorsing it in their advertisements. Upon returning home and inserting the video game cartridge into his Famicom console, the Kishin logo appeared, accompanied by a brown bear emblem, bearing the name Kuma Games. The video game finally commenced, its title ominously displayed as Zombie Slayer. As the young man tapped the start button, the video game finally initiated, displaying white text against a black background. Zombie Slayer. One day, when Earth was at peace, a meteor suddenly descended from the sky, sending shockwaves through the ground. Mysteriously, the area near the meteor impact, known as Torisan Town, turned into a danger zone, and its residents transformed into zombies. Soldier Ager, your mission is to investigate Torisan Town. Following that, the video game commenced, featuring the soldier clad in a green protective suit battling the crawling zombies. Eliminating the zombies caused them to drop red orbs or essence. When the character collected these, it enhanced his weapon. The young man found himself captivated by the game, recognizing its inspiration from Metroid but appreciating its distinctiveness and uniqueness. He had a great time and had no regrets about his purchase. Other players who bought the game shared his sentiment. After all, it didn't carry the complexity of Kishin's Kid Icarus or even Metroid, making it more accessible and enjoyable for many. Zombie Slayer offered a straightforward yet enjoyable gameplay experience. While it might not quite match the sheer fun factor of Super Mario Bros., players certainly appreciated that an independent video game like Zombie Slayer delivered solid gameplay. Meanwhile, amidst lingering dissatisfaction with the Kid Icarus video game, an unexpected development occurred when a well-known manga publisher, Shonen Jump, introduced a section dedicated to video game information in its pages. In a particular manga store. During this moment, Ichiro, an avid manga reader who also happened to be a gamer, was engrossed in reading Master Yamat, when he stumbled upon the video game information pages. His interest piqued. He was even more astonished to discover detailed tips and tricks for Kid Icarus and various complex Kishin video games. Ichiro exclaimed, "Hey, this is exactly what I've been searching for." The manga store owner, visibly frustrated, scolded Ichiro, "Hey! Don't read without paying. You should pay." He held out his hand, demanding payment. Ichiro felt a bit embarrassed for getting caught. Typically, he'd read without paying, but now, with video game tips and tricks, especially for Kishin's games, he handed over the money without hesitation. "Here." He muttered sheepishly, bowing as he took out his wallet and paid the manga store owner, who held out his open palm. The manga store owner was taken aback. He was accustomed to Ichiro's habit of reading without paying and leaving shamelessly when confronted. He hadn't anticipated such a quick and unhesitating payment this time. Similar situations unfolded in various manga stores, especially involving audacious young readers who suddenly paid up thanks to the Kishin video game tips and tricks. Chapter 92, Manga Industry. In Tokyo, Japan, word began to spread about Shonen Jump, along with valuable information on video game tips and tricks. Young manga enthusiasts gradually discovered dedicated pages focusing on video games within the magazine. In just a matter of days, Shonen Jump, particularly the weekly Shonen Jump magazine, saw a notable surge in popularity, leading to a modest increase in sales. One young man, named Teruo, who was struggling with games like Kid Icarus and Metroid, purchased the Tankban or weekly Shonen Jump magazine from a local manga store. As he delved into the tips and tricks featured in the magazine, he promptly inserted Kid Icarus into his Famicom. With great skill, Teruo manipulated the controller, meticulously following the magazine's illustrated instructions. "Wow, how did they figure this out?" Teruo exclaimed in amazement as he put the magazine's tips into practice, finding them genuinely helpful. However, his journey was far from over, as he had only just begun Stage 1. Many players had already discussed the immense difficulty of Kid Icarus Stage 1, leaving Teruo to wonder about the challenges that awaited in the advanced stages. However, the article suggested that the subsequent stages following Stage 1 would be comparatively easier. Teruo found this rather peculiar, as he had been skeptical at first. Nevertheless, since the article had genuinely assisted him in playing the game, he was willing to keep an open mind. As a direct result of the weekly Shonen Jump magazine article focusing on video games, the sales of Kid Icarus experienced a noticeable boost. Many individuals who understood the intricacies of the game were thrilled at the prospect of taking on such a challenging video game, especially Kid Icarus. Players found themselves having more fun than usual while attempting to conquer its difficulty. Kishin Headquarters. Upon learning about the video game article in the manga publisher Weekly Shonen Jump magazine, Shin's interest was significantly piqued. He had been anticipating the moment when video game enthusiasts would step forward and share their knowledge, and this time, they emerged to contribute to a manga publisher, Shonen Jump. As for Shonen Jump, Shin suddenly recollected the immensely popular manga series from his previous life, such as Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, and many more. Shin was well aware of the manga industry's potential, especially given its strong ties to the anime industry. Currently, only a handful of manga publishers have ventured into anime adaptations due to budget constraints and the fact that the two siblings, manga and anime, are not yet widely popular. Shin is well aware that highly popular manga and anime can seamlessly transition into successful video games. If Shin were to acquire both manga and anime properties and combine them with video games, it would create a synergistic triangle that could greatly benefit each other. A smile crept across Shin's face as he contemplated this concept. He decided to call in Li Han. As Li Han entered the room, he acknowledged Shin with a nod and took a seat in Shin's office. Shin handed a cup of coffee to Li Han and asked, "Mr. Han, have you heard of the company Shonen Jump?" Shin posed this question because, in this new world, he was entirely unfamiliar with manga publishers. His focus had been dedicated to the research and development of their Super Kishin SKT. The forthcoming console was expected to feature a 16-bit color palette for graphics, 64-bit audio RAM, and it was scheduled to be announced alongside the Game Boy. Li Han displayed no surprise when Shin inquired about Shonen Jump. After all, this manga publisher had recently released content related to video games. He responded, "The Shonen Jump Company, a privately listed company, generates at least 7 billion yen in annual revenue and operates as a subsidiary of Shueisha, which is also a private company," he conveyed with a nod. Shin nodded thoughtfully and expressed with a touch of regret, "I understand." It appeared that the Shonen Jump of this world was not significantly different from what he remembered in his previous life, Shin thought. Despite his initial intent to acquire it, his enthusiasm waned upon learning that it was a subsidiary of Shueisha. He sighed in disappointment. Li Han, wearing a smile, inquired, "May I ask, are you planning to acquire a manga publishing company this time?" Shin smiled and nodded, "To be honest, I've contemplated establishing my own manga publishing company, but that would be a formidable endeavor." Shin admitted. What he truly sought from Shonen Jump were its distribution channels, primarily to publish a select few popular manga series from his past life. Creating a manga publishing company from scratch would require him to invest billions of yen, which was far from ideal. Moreover, his current focus on video games left him with limited time and energy to create multiple popular manga series simultaneously. Taking it one step at a time was his strategy. Otherwise, a competitive manga publishing company might outpace him. Besides, he was still deeply involved in the development of Pokémon, and his commitment to ensuring the accuracy of the creatures in the real world had led him to hire numerous animal experts. Li Han nodded in agreement with Shin and suggested, collaborating with Shonen Jump and other manga publishing companies might be the more prudent route. Shin concurred, recognizing that aside from Shonen Jump, there were other manga publishers in the competitive manga market, even if they weren't as renowned. "That sounds like the sensible choice," he remarked. He understood the importance of not trying to dominate everything too hastily. For now, he had successfully established a foothold in the anime industry. When it came to the manga industry, a partnership with Shueisha seemed to be the optimal choice. Shueisha had been a prominent company in Japan, with its origins dating back to before World War II. As for reproducing manga series like Dragon Ball, Naruto, and One Piece, Shin was only familiar with the plot of the Dragon Ball series and the early stages of Naruto. One Piece was a series he had been a fan of in his previous life, but he was unaware of its ending. Hence, Shin planned to search for an Ichiro Oda in this world and introduce him to the idea of One Piece. In the interim, he would likely act as a CO writer for the series, taking a similar approach with other popular manga. Considering that Shonen Jump in this world didn't seem drastically different from his previous life, there was a possibility that the authors of these manga would exist in this world, or at the very least, there might be individuals with equivalent talent. Meanwhile, in a cafe in Tokyo, a slender man enjoyed his coffee and cake with little regard for manners. "This manga is undeniably intriguing. It's centered around a robot girl. It somewhat reminds me of Araimon," remarked a 30-year-old man seated across from the slender man. "But there's room for improvement," he added, addressing the slender man. When he noticed the thin man wasn't paying attention, he raised his voice, exclaiming, "Kira Toriyama! Are you even listening?" Hastily, the bespectacled thin man nodded, "Yes." He then shot a puzzled look at the man and asked, "What is it?" The man let out a sigh, patiently reiterating his opinion to Kira Toriyama. "Oh, I see. Make the girl cuter? Perhaps with pink hair." Kira pondered, stroking his chin. "Though, I still think purple hair might be better, he mused. Chapter 93, Suzuki and Tora's Move. It was approaching Christmas as the date was already December 21, 1990. Kishin's video games once again dominated the video game market with the release of their games. Tora and Suzuki struggled to compete with such an innovative company. Then, news broke that the Tora 16-bit had gained immense popularity in the United States. This surprised people, but it didn't seem unusual. Tora was a massive corporation compared to Kishin. Just when they thought it was over, news of Suzuki securing a $15 million contract with Michael Jackson to promote their SES 16-bit internationally was announced. Wow! It's the star! Billie Jean! Exclaimed a middle-aged salaryman when he saw the news in the newspaper. His friend nudged him and said, "Idiot! His name is Thriller." Tora Corporation. Conference room. Chairman Asahi Tanaka discussed this with the board of directors before making a final decision. Chairman Asahi Tanaka nodded and said, "All right, we'll contract Nirvana and Whitney Houston." The board of directors agreed. One is a famous band, and the other is a famous superstar. To ensure they wouldn't be overshadowed by Suzuki, Tora decided to spread rumors in Japan about their contracts with these top superstars. After all, Japanese people held foreign superstars in high regard. This sentiment wasn't limited to Japan, it extended throughout most of Asia. It appeared as if the battle between these two industry giants was reigniting, with them trading blows while largely ignoring Kishin, which was trying to establish itself as a major player, though it was far from achieving that status. Kishin headquarters. Shin noticed the news, and his employees were somewhat concerned. Their worry wasn't just about Suzuki signing a contract with a big superstar like Michael Jackson, but also about Tora releasing consoles in the United States. Lee Han suggested, "Should we also consider signing a superstar?" Shin contemplated with his hand on his chin and suddenly recalled some famous Japanese songs. For now, he wasn't prepared for the US or European markets, so he intended to thrive in Asia. As he pondered, a sudden recollection brought to mind a famous Japanese song that had gained popularity across various parts of Asia. He attempted to find that song in this world, as he enjoyed listening to it, but his search proved futile. Thus, he needed to find a suitable artist to perform it for him. Shin fell into thoughtful silence, and everyone in the room remained quiet. Myra had confidence in Shin and wasn't overly concerned, their time together had built a strong trust between them. While deep in thought, Shin suddenly remembered his second brother. Shin's second brother, Shiryu Suzuki, was a music enthusiast and a singer. Shin recalled his second brother's voice and smiled. With a smile, Shin said, "It appears there's no need to worry about Tora or Suzuki for now." Everyone in the room looked at Shin, puzzled. However, Shin paid no mind to their confusion and turned to Lee Han, saying, "Mr. Han, negotiate with Ian Retail." Lee Han and Myra gazed at Shin with excitement. Lee Han exclaimed, "Are we finally expanding our product overseas?" Shin nodded with a smile, "That's right. I believe it's time to enter various markets across Asia." Myra smiled and said, "Ian Retail isn't the only retailer reaching out, many are interested, such as Ruston's Supermarket, Tesco, Carrefour, and Giant Hypermarket, all of which have a strong presence in Southeast Asia." Shin nodded and smiled as he looked at the employees best suited for the task, focusing on Ctto Fujita. "You'll handle negotiations with them," he said. Ctto Fujita nodded with a smile, realizing that this opportunity might lead to his promotion to International Business Development Manager. He glanced at Oreo Masayoshi, who had been less successful in the negotiations for Tetris, and couldn't help but smile. Oreo Masayoshi let out a silent snort, aware of his previous setback. Shin faintly noticed this and smiled. He didn't penalize Oreo Masayoshi because the offer of a free Tetris game for the Game Boy would be limited to Japan. In other countries, it would not be free. The same applied to Super Mario Bros. And other video games, they wouldn't be given away as freebies. After all, how could he profit from such a highly profitable and famous video game if he made them free? After the meeting concluded, Shin dialed a number. "Hello, Kishin," came a somewhat intimidating voice from the other end of the phone. It was Oyabun Obu, the leader of the Yamauchi-gumi. "I need you to locate a specific individual for me. Please send your people here, and I'll provide a photo," Shin stated, devoid of emotion. This was how he dealt with individuals like Obu: less emotion, fewer mistakes. Shin didn't fully comprehend the minds of these dangerous individuals. They might appear respectful, but any display of weakness could cost him their respect. Obu responded with a smile on the other end of the phone. "Oh? Is this someone you'd like to see erased from existence?" There was a chilling edge to his voice, as if he were prepared to eliminate someone. Shin, upon hearing this, broke into a silent sweat and felt a shiver down his spine. He hastily replied with forced calmness, "No, he's my brother. I just want to talk to him." Obu, hearing this, responded with a somewhat disappointed tone, "Oh, so it's Kishin's brother, hey?" A faint twitch appeared at the corner of Shin's mouth as he detected the disappointment in Obu's voice. Obu responded with reassurance, "All right. We'll secure him and deliver him safely to you." Shin nodded and began, "I'll provide you with the picture." However, Shin's words were cut short as Obu interjected, "No need for a picture, Kishin. We're familiar with all your brothers." A smile played on Obu's lips as he added, "Just let us know which brother it is." Shin frowned upon hearing this but still replied, "It's my second brother." Oyabun Obu nodded and said, "Very well." He continued, though with a hint of embarrassment, "Forgive me for making this request, Kishin, but..." He paused briefly before adding, "Could we possibly borrow hundreds of millions from you?" Upon hearing the request, Shin fell into silence. He inquired, "How much?" Oyabun Obu responded quietly, "Around 300 million. Noticing the silence, Oyabun Obu added, "It's all right if you can't." "Very well. However, transferring such a substantial sum of money will require some time, so your patience is necessary," Shin stated with genuine emotionlessness this time. Oyabun Obu felt a hint of unease hearing Kishin's indifferent voice but replied, "I understand. I'm patient." Shin refrained from asking why they needed such a significant amount of money. He agreed because the Yamauchi-gumi had been instrumental in his expansion in Japan. Without their support, his endeavors might have struggled in Japan. The Yakuza gangs and families provided efficient means for expanding and maintaining businesses. Beyond the Yakuza, there were other criminal elements that disrupted order, and even the Japanese police had difficulty swiftly dealing with them. The Yakuza helped deter these elements, and many businesses, both small and large, sought Yakuza assistance. Even loan sharks called upon the Yakuza when borrowers, especially gamblers in clandestine venues, failed to repay, leading the loan sharks to enlist the Yakuza to handle such situations. Chapter 94, Reunion. In a Tokyo alley, Shiryu sang, "Watashi no aiwa, yoru no hibi no han no ani, kono hiroi sekai de, anata wa watashi no mishabikakata. Watashi no kokoro wa anata no yazuragi, iin ni todomaru, anata no tame ni tsukararta takara, subit no katakide. Dakara watashi no teo torai, toshi okoi, shinpai suruhitsu wa ni. Azari no kaya bin wa ni. Kono ai omitsu kita toki, iin ni ite, watashi no yakusoku, anata no kokoro wa watashi totomo ni anzandisu. My promise to you, your heart is safe with me." While he sang, a few people lingered to enjoy his performance. Unbeknownst to Shiryu, a group of men in black suits left their cars and approached him. As they neared, the onlookers quickly dispersed. Shiryu noticed the commotion but continued to sing. When he finished, he gazed at the man who had approached him and inquired, "Are you connected to my father?" Sato Nakamura, the man who had come forward, shook his head and replied, "No. Just come with us." Shiryu eyed them cautiously. Upon hearing this, Sato calmly stated, "Your younger brother is searching for you." Shiryu, upon realizing that it must be Seiki, shook his head and responded, "If you're one of Seiki's men, the answer is no. I won't be coming." Sato shook his head in response and added, "No, the one seeking you is Shinro." Shiryu was taken aback by this revelation and thought to himself, "Shinro." Eventually, Shiryu nodded to Sato and agreed to accompany him. He followed Sato and entered the black car. As they passed a line of black cars, Shiryu grew increasingly perplexed, harboring doubts about whether it was truly Shinro who was looking for him. The car journey continued for a while until they reached a traditional Japanese mansion. Shiryu started to feel a sense of unease as he followed Sato, observing the disciplined presence of numerous men in black suits surrounding the area. This resembles... Shiryu cast a gloomy glance at his surroundings and grimly pondered, a Yakuza hideout. With his doubts lingering, Shiryu accompanied Sato into a specific room within the mansion. Upon entering the room, Shiryu spotted a young man casually dressed in a jacket. His eyes widened in surprise. It was his fourth brother, Shinro Suzuki. Relief washed over Shiryu's face, and he quickly made his way over to Shinro with a smile. "Hey, little brother. How have you been?" he inquired. Shinro, who was seated, returned the smile and nodded. He rose to embrace his brother lightly and reciprocated, "I'm doing well. But enough about me, how are you?" Shiryu let out a wry chuckle and replied, "I'm doing more than fine." He took a seat and noticed a table adorned with various Japanese dishes and even a bottle of sake. Without delving too deep into questions about his second brother, Shinro invited Shiryu to partake in the meal. As they engaged in light conversation, Shiryu suddenly inquired, "Did father send you to persuade me to return?" He chuckled as he posed the question. Shinro maintained a smile and responded, "Of course not." Shiryu regarded Shinro with skepticism and remarked, "Really?" He surveyed their opulent surroundings and the significant number of men present. "You've arranged a room for me in this mansion, and there are many people here." Shiryu looked at Shinro thoughtfully and added with doubt, "I'm not convinced that you have these resources at your disposal." Shin simply smiled in response to his second brother's inquiry. He playfully shook his head and said, "Hee, you might be surprised, but I'm a big boss now," with a hint of pride in his voice. Shiryu chuckled, as if taking it as a jest. "Hee, really? I didn't know you could tell such a tall tale," he quipped. Shin firmly shook his head and adopted a serious tone. "I'm dead serious, second brother," he declared. Shin pointed to the Kishin logo adorning his blue jacket and continued, "This is my company now, older brother." Sipping his sake, Shiryu peered at Shinro, silently contemplating. "He doesn't appear to be lying," he thought. With a smile and a touch of confidence, Shin affirmed, "I am the owner of Kishin." Shiryu, upon hearing this, was somewhat taken aback. He had heard of Kishin before. It was a video game company that had been gaining popularity in Tokyo in recent months. Curious, Shiryu inquired, "Did father assist you in this endeavor?" Shin shook his head and replied, "No, in fact, I've become independent. I haven't had contact with the family for a while now." Shiryu nodded, starting to grasp the situation. "It appears that my little brother has already achieved his dream," Shiryu observed, casting an envious glance at Shinro. "While I'm still out here performing on the streets," he mused, looking down momentarily. He reached for the sake bottle, filling his cup, and downed it in one go. Noticing Shiryu's reaction, Shin quickly interjected, "Second brother, would you like to make your dream come true?" He gazed warmly at Shiryu, recalling how his second brother had looked after him until he left home to chase his own aspirations. From what Shin remembered, the original Shin had been heavily influenced by Shiryu. Shiryu was taken aback by the offer, and he responded with enthusiasm, "Fulfill my dream? Of course, I want to." Upon hearing Shiryu's eagerness, Shin continued with his invitation, "I want you to join my company, Kishin Entertainment." Shiryu's eyes widened a little, and he looked at Shinro with a glimmer of hope. "Really?" Shin nodded and stated, "I've even prepared lyrics for you to sing," as he retrieved a piece of paper and placed it in front of Shiryu. Curiosity piqued, Shiryu examined the paper and found the song title to be Skiyaki, Yui Omutaru. As he read the composed lyrics, excitement welled up within him, and he felt genuinely inspired. "Whoa! This song is fantastic!" he exclaimed, offering his praise to Shinro. Shin wore a contented smile and nodded in agreement. With a smile of his own, Shiryu declared, "All right. I'll join you." Shin reciprocated the smile and said, "Yeah, let's surprise father together." Shiryu chuckled and smiled. Following their decision, Shinro and Shiryu delved into the contract discussions. As Shiryu was Shin's brother, Shinro extended a special and generous contract to him, which left Shiryu pleasantly surprised. As they continued to enjoy their meal and engage in conversation, Shiryu learned that Shin was already engaged. This revelation prompted Shiryu to exclaim, "Really? You're getting married before me?" Shin chuckled at his brother's words. The next chapter will feature a slight time skip. Chapter 95, Kishin's expansion, South Korea, Kishin's entry point. January 1, 1991. After Christmas, Shin and Myra celebrated the New Year together. Shin received calls from his mother and second sister inquiring about his well-being, to which he reassured them. Shin and Myra ushered in the New Year together by touring various tourist spots in Tokyo. Kishin Headquarters. January 2, 1991. Shin, who had harbored a keen interest in the manga industry for some time, had Lee Han investigate the authors in Shonen Jump and other manga publishing companies. He managed to identify the equivalent authors of the famous manga from his previous life, such as Kira Toriyama and Masato Kishimoto, among others. Surprisingly, their works were eerily similar to those from his previous life. What's particularly intriguing is the presence of an author named Eiichiro Oda in this world. The name of the author of One Piece remained unchanged, and he even secured the second place in the Yakuza award by submitting Wanted, a Western-themed one-shot. Shin felt a surge of excitement as he prepared rough outlines of the popular manga from his previous life to share these scripts with these authors. As long as he held the rights to these beloved manga, he could adapt them into video games whenever he pleased. For now, Shin wasn't in a rush to contact them. He knew that he would meet these authors soon to discuss his vision, though it was originally their creations. Currently, his focus was on expanding the company's presence in other Asian regions. Kishin successfully struck deals with numerous retailers with a strong presence in East Asia and Southeast Asia. EM Retail, in particular, concentrated on Taiwan, Hong Kong, and South Korea. Other partners had a substantial footprint in Southeast Asia. This marked the first time Kishin established its own distribution networks, at least within Asia. Tora and Suzuki were informed about these developments, but they didn't seem concerned. Besides the USA and Europe, they had their own presence in Asia, with their retail companies situated in the region. They weren't worried since their products were already popular in Asia. However, they remained heavily focused on the USA and Europe, especially Tora, who had already released their products in the USA, with Europe to follow. Suzuki didn't want to fall behind and planned to release their video game consoles and cartridges in the USA as well. As a result, retail companies that had more neutral connections with Tora and Suzuki also contracted with Kishin. Tora had developed its own video game controllers that, although not very popular in Japan, gained popularity in the USA, such as a gun controller based on Kishin's design. Similarly, Suzuki had introduced game controllers to complement some of their video games that had garnered attention in Japan, including a sniper controller that became a hit in Japan. Even though Tora and Suzuki had already established themselves in Asia, some of their gun controllers were still unavailable in the region. As of now, Kishin planned to release its products in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and South Korea in February, as they prepared ample stock and tasked their employees with setting up local branches in these countries. The process was expedited but carried out meticulously by Kishin's capable employees. Seoul, South Korea. South Korea's economic growth, which had stood at $283.4 billion in 1990, was steadily increasing in the current year of 1991. This is evidence of the country's growing economic status, but one of the key reasons for this growth was the emergence of a few conglomerate companies, such as Samstar Electronic, Hyun Motors, and Lucky Gold Group, which evolved into global-scale corporations that rivaled major Japanese companies. Among these companies, Samstar Electronics thrived in the domestic market with products like TVs, VCRs, radios, and computers, surpassing the Suzuki Group in their local market competition. While Suzuki Group also offered similar products, Samstar Electronics faced tough competition, particularly in telephone and phone sales, where Suzuki excelled due to their products' durability and long-lasting keyboards. Both Samstar and Suzuki had their semiconductor divisions. These South Korean companies were spurred by the competition with technologically superior Japanese companies, which led to their gradual innovation over time. However, one day, Tora Electronics, a Japanese company, introduced video game consoles and video games that sparked considerable interest among the South Korean population. As time passed, the popularity of these products raised concerns among South Korean companies, especially Samstar Electronics. However, they were somewhat relieved when the video game trend started to wane, as Tora's video games weren't as captivating, even though they still entertained most people. Yet, the South Korean companies remained watchful, aware of the video game market's thriving status in Japan. As expected, Suzuki Electronics eventually entered the scene, releasing their video game console and games, which once again dominated the market. But, similar to Tora, the initial enthusiasm began to wane. Then, on February 19, 1991, Kishin marked its first foray into a foreign market. Kishin chose South Korea, a nation steadily growing in economic prosperity, as its initial entry point. KBS 1 TV. The news of Kishin's debut in the South Korean market was broadcast on KBS 1 TV. The news anchor declared, "The next report is sure to pique the curiosity of the video game community. Japan's leading video game company is making its long-awaited debut in the South Korean market and will release its products soon. Our reporter, Ri Chae-wook Sunbi, will delve into the details." He smiled as the television split into two screens, and another person appeared on the other side. The news anchor inquired, "Ri Sunbi, could you please provide us with more information about Kishin? Are you currently located outside their headquarters?" Ri Chae-wook stood outside Kishin's building in Toshima Ward, Japan, and he nodded at the camera. "Exactly, Sam Dae-hyun-nim," he acknowledged before continuing. Kishin Electronics video game consoles and video games utterly dominated the Japanese market, surpassing even the two giants, Tora and Suzuki. Despite the Kishin console having somewhat lower specifications, it captured the hearts of the Japanese. Ri Chae-wook continued as the camera zoomed in on Kishin's logo adorning the building. He explained, Kishin was the first to release a video game console that rekindled people's interest in gaming, and that might be the reason why the Japanese people hold a special place for Kishin. The scene transitioned to bustling arcades filled with people enjoying games like Super Mario. This was a recorded segment, and Ri Chae-wook interviewed one of the Japanese players. In somewhat broken Japanese, he asked, "Why do you believe Kishin is superior?" The Japanese player in his 20s gazed at the South Korean reporter with a hint of indifference for a moment before exclaiming, "It's the absolute best. When I play Super Mario Bros., I don't need any other video games. He said this with great enthusiasm. The reporter, Ri Chainwook, was somewhat taken aback by the Japanese player's fervor. He nodded as the scene switched back to the live broadcast. As you can see, Kishin's video games are truly revered by the Japanese people here. After a while, the report concluded. Meanwhile, the South Korean viewers in their homes expressed frustration over yet another Japanese company entering their country. Chapter 96, South Korean Reactions on Kishin's Video Games. Seoul, South Korea. While many South Korean people expressed their dissatisfaction with Japanese companies entering their market, numerous video game enthusiasts were filled with excitement. AEON Retail in South Korea, which has long established a presence in the country, began distributing stocks of Kishin Famicom. Young South Koreans could be seen lining up at retail stores across the nation. Among them was Rim-mi, a young woman with a deep passion for video games ever since Tora's initial release in the country. She genuinely enjoyed Tora games at first, but over time, her interest waned, and she found Suzuki's games less appealing. However, despite her low interest in these two Japanese companies' video games, they ignited her overall passion for the gaming world. Rim-mi's curiosity was piqued not only because she found some Tora and Suzuki games interesting but also because she discovered a Japanese company that had surpassed these two, known as Kishin. She developed a genuine interest in Kishin's video games, though she was disappointed to learn they were not available in South Korea. Then, the exciting news broke that Kishin would finally enter the South Korean market, bringing her great joy. She promptly left her home to purchase the game, heading straight to the AEON retail store. Upon arrival, she noticed a considerable crowd already forming, and her excitement grew. I heard Super Mario Bros. Was the first video game to gain immense popularity in Japan after many decades, a person in the line shared with his friend. His companion responded with a snort, I had my doubts, you know. Japanese have some peculiar tastes. It might turn out to be a subpar video game. Another person in the line chimed in, saying, I saw the preview in a TV advertisement, and it seemed like it's going to be a great video game. A third person added, we won't know for sure until we try it ourselves. Rim-mi listened to the conversation out of curiosity, as the people around her engaged in lively discussions. Being an introvert, she remained silent and patiently waited. In the meantime, she retrieved her Suzuki Walkman from her bag and listened to Michael Jackson's music. After a while, it was finally her turn to make the purchase, and she acquired the Kishin Famicom for 19,000 won, which equated to 14,000 yen. After purchasing the console, she also acquired a collection of games, including Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid. Her excitement to get home quickly was palpable, and upon returning home, she arrived at her family's mansion, as she hailed from a wealthy background. Upon entering, her mother, Han Yoo-jin, clad in traditional Korean attire, noticed her carrying the Kishin Warp package. Han Yoo-jin furrowed her brows and remarked, Tala, daughter, you've bought more of those seemingly useless video games again. Rim-mi-jin smiled and gently reassured her mother, Iomi and I, you know this is my only source of enjoyment after arduous studying. She approached her mother and warmly embraced her. Han Yoo-jin's expression softened as she gazed at the logo on her daughter's package. Kishin. Rim-mi nodded with anticipation in her eyes and replied, yes, that's right. I heard uncle is working at this company. Han Yoo-jin furrowed her brow and remarked, he left the country a long time ago and distanced himself from the Han family, so our connections are quite limited now. Rim-mi pouted, expressing her disappointment, it's a shame. I've always wanted to meet him. Han Yoo-jin chuckled and teased, you only wanted to meet him because he works for a Japanese video game company, didn't you? She saw right through her daughter's motive. Rim-mi offered a wry smile and let out a small humph before heading upstairs to her room. Rim-mi promptly entered her room and connected the Famicom to the television. Once it booted up, she eagerly inserted the video game she was curious to play, Super Mario Bros. The video game sprang to life, and the iconic Super Mario Bros. Theme music filled the room. Rim-Mi's eyes were glued to the screen, where she watched Super Mario dashing across the title screen. With a rush of excitement, she initiated the game and saw her character, a diminutive man. As she played, she controlled her character, making it jump. She remembered the preview gameplay she had seen earlier and imitated it, leaping towards the floating boxes adorned with question marks. With each successful strike on the boxes, they rewarded her with shiny gold coins, and the question marks vanished. Then, she leaped onto another box, causing a mushroom to pop out. Her character absorbed it, instantly growing larger and more robust, making it effortlessly jump to greater heights. She continued to play the game, encountering ground-dwelling enemies. Skillfully, she hopped on their heads, causing them to tumble into the background. Her initial curiosity quickly transformed into an absorbing experience as she played for just a few minutes. She could already feel herself getting deeply engrossed in the video game. However, her immersion was abruptly halted by a game over, accompanied by a melancholy Super Mario Bros. Melody. Arg! That plant suddenly appearing on the pipes caught me off guard, she exclaimed as she restarted the game. Gradually, she discovered that she could make her character enter the green pipes by pressing the down button. Initially, she had assumed the pipes were merely part of the background. Inside the pipe, she encountered a multitude of illuminated question mark boxes, each rewarding her with valuable points. Then, she skillfully directed her character to leap onto blocks and bricks, initially thinking they would shatter, only to realize that she could collect coins from them. Wow! A hidden treasure trove! She exclaimed. As time passed, her initial expectation that her interest might wane as she continued playing shifted. Instead, she found herself becoming even more engrossed in the video game, Super Mario Bros. Similar scenes were unfolding in households across South Korea as players engaged with Super Mario Bros. At the same time. Those who had initially harbored doubts openly confessed they were mistaken, and those who had purchased the Kishin Famicom and its video games out of sheer curiosity found themselves not regretting their choice. As time passed, a growing number of people began to enthusiastically share the appeal of Kishin's console and its video games. For those requesting an additional 5 chapters, since we are in the top 5, if you look closely next to the top 5, top 10, and 15, there's a check mark beside them because the additional chapters have already been posted. As for the top 1, the absence of a check mark next to it indicates that the additional 8 chapters haven't been posted yet, as we haven't reached the top 1 position. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 97, Kishin's Entertainment Album, Shin's Ambitious Plan and Mario Craze. Suzuki Mansion. Rookie Suzuki recently contacted her fourth brother for New Year and inquired about his well-being. She expressed genuine concern for him and also attempted to reach out to her second brother, although she suspected he might not have a working phone. Despite her worries, all she could do was hope for the best for both her brothers. Currently, she was engrossed in writing a novel, drawing inspiration from The Legend of Zelda, a video game influenced by Peter Pan. Her journey as a novelist had its share of challenges. She occasionally received letters from her readers, and she noticed they fell into 3 categories. Some were casual readers who enjoyed her work without much criticism, others provided constructive critiques that helped her improve, and then there were those she disliked the most, readers who labeled everything as cringe. While some of their feedback was valid, most of it seemed to be focused on finding fault in everything. She carefully reviewed their letters to determine if they contained useful insights to enhance her work. After completing her writing session, she turned on the TV and tuned into a music channel to unwind. However, what she witnessed next left her utterly shocked. On the screen, her second brother, Shiryu, was performing on a bar stage, surrounded by a captivated audience. "Shiryu Unii-san!" she exclaimed, her eyes widening in astonishment. Suzuki Group Headquarters. Inside the chairman's room at the Suzuki Group headquarters, the Suzuki father and his sons examined an album they held in their hands. Indeed, it was none other than Shiryu Suzuki's album, released by Kishin Entertainment. Shiro turned his gaze to his two sons and, with a furrowed brow, asked, "Why did you only inform me now that your second brother is actually signed with Kishin?" Shiko and Seiki exchanged glances, and Seiki offered a wry smile as he explained, "We understand that you've been extremely busy, father." Shiro simply looked at the album and instructed, "Play this album. Let's find out what surprises this stupid brother of yours has in store." They inserted the album into the cassette player, and the music began to play through the speakers. The song gradually started with these lyrics. "I'll look up and walk, so my tears won't fall. I remember the spring day. A lonely night." Shiryu's exquisite and melancholic voice filled the room as the song continued. "I'll look up and walk, counting the blurry stars. I remember the summer day. A lonely night." Shiryu's singing continued, and the song flowed seamlessly. The Suzuki father and sons listened in silence, deeply moved by the song's melancholic and sorrowful melody. Sorrow is in the shadow of the stars. Sorrow is in the shadow of the moon. I'll look up and walk, so my tears won't fall. The song was nearing its end, and Shiro even felt a tear threatening to fall as he recalled the day he had met Eri at the festival. Both of them were wearing traditional Japanese clothing, and their chance encounter had led to a gradual, heartwarming connection. As if guided by destiny, Eri happened to be a member of a royal family, albeit a family that had significantly waned in power compared to its historical prominence. Nonetheless, their influence still held sway within the country. When Shiro's father learned of Eri's royal lineage, he strongly encouraged Shiro to propose to her. Following their union, they married and were blessed with 4 sons and 2 daughters. However, as time passed, Shiro's affection for his wife gradually faded as he became consumed by his work. Moreover, the disappointments caused by their sons, Shiryu and Shinro, fueled his frustration with Eri for bearing children who didn't meet his expectations. While engrossed in listening to the song, Shiro momentarily forgot that the performance was by his least favored son. When the Sukiyaki song concluded, Shiko and Seiki exchanged glances and turned their attention to their father. Shiko asked tentatively, "What are your thoughts, father?" Shiro bit his lower lip to suppress his tears and replied, "That young rascal has matured." Seeing their father's emotions, Shiko and Seiki were puzzled. Shiro continued, "But I won't fully accept him yet. He needs to do better to prove me wrong," he said with unwavering determination. Kishin headquarters. Shin couldn't help but smile as he reviewed the sales figures for his second brother's album. Thanks to Kishin's marketing efforts, the album had slowly gained popularity in Tokyo. It had found its way onto music channels and radio stations, gradually introducing Shiryu's music to the people of Tokyo. Shin genuinely felt happiness for his second brother, recognizing that he truly deserved the success he was achieving. Looking ahead, Shin understood that to compete with Suzuki's roster of contracted superstars and the rumors of Tora seeking to sign Western superstars, he needed to take a different approach. If he couldn't afford to acquire established superstars, he would create them. Yes, this time, Shin intended to tap into famous songs from his past life and find suitable musicians to perform them, just as he had with Shiryu. This approach would not only be more cost-effective but also provide struggling yet talented artists with an opportunity, fostering their gratitude toward Kishin. Shin's plan was to assemble a brigade of superstars who would remain loyal to Kishin. However, given that Kishin hadn't yet expanded into the Western market, he had to temporarily set aside this ambitious plan. February 25, 1991. Many devoted fans of Super Mario Bros. Had been fervently requesting Kishin to develop more Mario video games. It was as though their prayers had been answered when Kishin unveiled their latest creation, Super Mario Bros. 2, The Lost Levels. This move by Kishin sent shockwaves through the Japanese gaming community. As soon as Super Mario fans got wind of the release, they hastily formed long lines at various stores in Tokyo, and indeed, across the entire country of Japan. For a period, the fervor for the Super Mario Bros. Video game surpassed all expectations in Japan, reaching a level of excitement that was truly astounding. The news of the Super Mario Bros. 2, The Lost Levels release was so significant that it made headlines on several major TV channels in Tokyo. NHK News. Good afternoon, I'm Yumi Yamamoto, and right now, we are at one of the stores where Kishin is selling their video game. The sudden release of Super Mario Bros. 2, The Lost Levels has sparked an unprecedented wave of excitement, not just in Tokyo but in various parts of Japan. The scene then shifted to an incredibly long line, reminiscent of the frenzy that ensued when Apple launched its first iPhone in Shin's previous life. Among the eager customers, a heated argument broke out. "I got in line first," one man exclaimed. "No, I did." "Stop lying," a rather imposing individual retorted, adding, "Quit complaining if you don't want trouble. You think you can intimidate me?" The man challenged the imposing figure. "You want trouble, hey?" the tough-looking individual declared, ready for a confrontation. As the two individuals argued, many people in the line either ignored them, distancing themselves, or curiously gathered to observe the commotion. The camera captured this scene, and Yumi Yamamoto, though internally excited, maintained a solemn expression as she reported, "As you can see, due to the Kishin video game, there have been altercations and disagreements among the crowd, perhaps slightly overstating the situation, given that it involved only two people." Yumi went on to interview both individuals, each sharing their perspective for the television audience. Meanwhile, those watching at home, particularly the older generation, shook their heads in disapproval and cautioned their younger family members to steer clear of video games. Chapter 98, People's Awareness on Kishin in Foreign Markets. Tokyo, Japan. With the sudden release of Super Mario Bros. 2, The Lost Levels, the enthusiasm for this game surged not just in Tokyo, but across all of Japan. This fervor can be attributed to the fact that Super Mario Bros. Marked Kishin's debut in the world of video games and the captivating gameplay of Super Mario Bros., which appealed to people of all ages. However, the downside of its immense popularity and craze was that it led to numerous arguments in various locations, including stores and malls. The demand for Super Mario Bros. 2, The Lost Levels was so intense that the game sold out within just one day. Despite the apparent silence of strong competitors like Tora and Suzuki, they had already made their moves behind the scenes. Several major TV channels in Tokyo began to feature segments highlighting the perceived negative effects of the Mario craze. One particular TV channel had a news anchor who raised concerns with a social psychology expert. The expert expressed, "It is genuinely concerning how much influence video games can have on a group of people. We should expect more negative behavior from this group, especially with highly addictive games, like the ones produced by the leading company in the Japanese video game industry." All of these discussions seemed to point toward Kishin without even mentioning Tora or Suzuki. However, this propaganda did not significantly impact the sales of Kishin video games, except among older people in Japan who held negative views of video games, and some strict parents. It's worth noting that Suzuki enjoyed a favorable reputation among the latter group due to their educational consoles. Meanwhile, in various countries across Asia, such as Hong Kong and Taiwan, Kishin continued its expansion unabated. Shortly after gaining popularity in South Korea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, Kishin made its much-anticipated release in Southeast Asia, slowly garnering the attention of this region. Kishin, which had only been in existence for 11 months, had an estimated net worth that had already surpassed 100 billion yen, a staggering figure that drew envious glances from companies like Tora and Suzuki. Kishin's commitment to providing more employment opportunities endeared it to the Japanese government, further solidifying its status in the business world of Japan, where many could already foresee the global dominance of this once fledgling company that was steadily gaining momentum. Meanwhile, on March 1, 1991, it was Myra's birthday, and Shin and Myra celebrated together. Then, on March 5, 1991, it was Shin's birthday. Surprisingly, Shin's birthday was close to Myra's, so they, along with key employees and an invited Western enthusiast named Hideki, celebrated Shin's birthday together. On March 20, 1991, Shin surprised the video game community once again by releasing Super Mario Bros. 3, featuring a two-player mode. This led to a resurgence in Mario game trends in Japan. However, that wasn't the only surprising news. Suzuki made a bold move by entering the USA and European markets, creating an event where a specific console, the SES 16-bit, offered a chance to win $20,000 as a reward. This attracted a large number of buyers eager to seize the opportunity. Suzuki's strategic move paid off as their sales skyrocketed, gradually surpassing Tora in the 16-bit market. To seal their victory, Suzuki enlisted Michael Jackson to promote their products. In a heartwarming commercial, Michael was seen joyfully playing the SES 16-bit with a group of children, captivating the hearts of pop star fans. SES 16-bit sales surged even further. Not to be outdone, Tora countered with advertisements featuring a famous band singing praises for their console and video games. The competition between Suzuki and Tora intensified in the USA, as they couldn't make as much of an impact in their home market. April 5, 1991. Kishin celebrated its one-year anniversary. On April 7, 1991, shortly after Kishin's anniversary celebration, the wedding of Shin and Myra was approaching. Despite Shin's young age of 19, he was filled with excitement, and everything felt surreal for a while. He invited his second brother, his friend, Hideki Kiyoshi, as well as his second sister and mother to a Japanese restaurant but a modest yet elegant chapel. Suzuki Mansion. Rookie Suzuki and Eri Suzuki were rather perplexed when Shinro suddenly called them and invited them to an important party. They inquired about the nature of the event, but Shinro simply advised them to dress nicely. They harbored some doubts. During dinner, Rookie and Eri exchanged knowing glances. Naturally, they refrained from mentioning Shinro in the presence of the family's patriarch, Shiro Suzuki. As Shiro enjoyed his meal, he suddenly remarked, "Lately, I've had a nagging feeling that something isn't quite right," he said between bites of his food. Eri gazed at him with concern and asked, "Have you had a medical checkup? Could it be due to overworking?" Shiko chimed in, "Father, you should take a break." Seiki nodded in agreement. Shiro shook his head and replied, "No, I've had a thorough checkup, and the doctor didn't find anything unusual." Eri regarded him with a tinge of worry, saying, "I see." Shiro nodded and continued, "I just have this sense that something significant is on the horizon. I don't know what it is." Reina chuckled and playfully remarked, "Maybe it's because my birthday is just around the corner, right? You're going to get me an expensive gift, aren't you?" She made this request to her father, but oddly, he and everyone else in the room seemed to ignore her. Eri and Rookie exchanged glances, suddenly remembering that Shinro had invited them to an important party. Then, Shiro suddenly turned to his wife and asked, "How is Shinro?" He inquired, recalling something that had been on his mind. Everyone present was taken aback by this unexpected question. Shiro noticed their surprise and cleared his throat, repeating the question to his wife, "Have you been in touch with him recently?" Eri, with wide eyes, looked at her husband and inquired, "Why the sudden interest?" Shiro, hearing her question, furrowed his brow and responded, "What do you mean, sudden interest? He's been on his own for a year." Everyone exchanged puzzled glances. Shiro went on to clarify, "I simply wanted to know how he's doing. I just want to gauge his situation and, if necessary, remind that stubborn child that his father is always right." Upon hearing this explanation, The others nodded with some understanding. Eri added, he got in touch with me yesterday and mentioned that he's doing well. Shiro, upon hearing this, seemed a bit disappointed and mumbled, I see. Eri nodded and continued, he even invited me to an important party on April 12, glancing at Rookie as Shinro had specified that she and Rookie were the only ones invited. Shiro, Shiko, and Seiki furrowed their brows in response. Shiro thoughtfully remarked, an important party, hey. While there might appear to be several time skips, I deliberately included them to maintain pacing and avoid unnecessary filler content. I plan to dedicate an entire chapter to the wedding, and then shift the focus to video game development for the remaining storyline. Chapter 99, Wedding. Tokyo, Japan. Hilton Tokyo Hotel. The Hilton Tokyo Hotel was often chosen as a wedding venue, and it also housed a restaurant section that offered traditional Japanese dishes. A sleek black Suzuki car pulled up in front of the building. Rookie and Eri couldn't fathom why Shinro had invited them to such a place. They approached the front desk, where the clerk noticed their elegant attire and politely inquired, hello, how may I assist you? Eri smiled and hesitantly replied, we're here for Shinro Suzuki. She was uncertain whether Shinro had actually made a reservation at the Hilton Hotel. Upon hearing this, the clerk immediately nodded and said, oh, certainly. Mr. Suzuki has already reserved a spot for you on the 38th floor. Rookie and Eri exchanged surprised glances. They couldn't help but wonder how Shinro could afford the most exclusive floor in this opulent and expensive hotel. The clerk confirmed, someone will be available to escort you shortly. Eri shook her head and said, no need, we can find our way. The clerk nodded in agreement. Eri and Rookie entered the elevator and made their way to the 38th floor. They speculated that Shinro's friend might be having a wedding. 38th floor of Hilton Hotel, Sky Chapel. The venue was spacious with transparent walls that offered a panoramic view of the city, buildings, roads, and cars on top of the Hilton Hotel. Several guests had already taken their seats. Most of them were Kishin employees. Myra's parents couldn't help but shed a few tears as they watched their eldest daughter in suits with Shin, and Minji observed with a touch of envy. Shiryu, Shinro's younger brother, looked at him with a warm smile. As the elevator reached its destination, Rookie and Eri exited and were immediately approached by a well-dressed man who appeared to be the coordinator. He greeted them with impeccable etiquette, saying, hello, ladies. Mr. Suzuki and the bride are already inside. Allow me to escort you to the venue. Rookie and Eri nodded absent-mindedly, but as the meaning of his words sunk in, their eyes widened in shock. Eri couldn't contain her surprise and blurted out, bride. Rookie was equally stunned and exclaimed, what bride are you talking about? The coordinator, adjusting his glasses, seemed a bit taken aback and said, oh? Mr. Suzuki didn't inform you. Rookie and Eri immediately shook their heads. The man smiled wryly and said, it's Mr. Suzuki's wedding. Rookie and Eri felt as though they'd been struck by lightning. In just one short year, everything had changed. Shinro, the person they hadn't held in high regard, was now getting married in a luxurious venue. They nodded and hastened to follow the man who was guiding them to the venue. Upon reaching the venue, they noticed that it had been beautifully and elegantly decorated for the wedding. Many eyes were fixed on Shinro and the bride seated at a table. One of Kishin's employees was speaking into a microphone, without our young boss, Shinro Suzuki, we'd probably be struggling to find a job. He continued to address the guests while Shiryu's music played in the background. However, Rookie and Eri paid little attention to the speech, their focus fixed on Shinro Suzuki at the front, who seemed to sense their gaze. Shin looked in their direction and greeted them with a warm smile. Everything felt surreal for Rookie and Eri. As for Myra, she noticed Shin looking in a different direction and turned her attention to see two women, one middle-aged and one young. Myra was taken aback and whispered in Shin's ear, are these the mother and sister you were talking about when you invited them? Shin nodded and replied with a laugh, yes, it's your future mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Meanwhile, Rookie and Eri looked at the woman beside Shinro. Eri couldn't contain her surprise and exclaimed, "Is that the bride? Is she marrying my youngest son?" She found it hard to believe. Among all her sons, she had thought that either Shiko or Seiki would be the first to get married, but it turned out to be Shinro. What's more, of all her sons, Eri had been the most concerned about whether Shinro would ever find a partner, and here he was, ahead of his brothers in the race. As they contemplated this, someone called out to them from a distance, "Mom, little sister." Rookie and Eri turned their heads and saw Shiryu waving at them. They exchanged surprised glances, then approached Shiryu. Eri said, "You're here." Everything felt bewildering to both Rookie and Eri. Shiryu chuckled and remarked, "It appears our dependable fourth son forgot to inform you about this event." Rookie and Eri nodded in agreement. Rookie then looked at the vast and luxurious surroundings and said, "Hey, I heard you've become quite a popular singer." She turned her attention to Shiryu and continued, "Did you arrange all of this for Shinro?" Eri also looked at her second son, who was thriving in life. Shiryu simply chuckled and responded, "Of course not." Rookie and Eri were somewhat taken aback, and Eri asked, "Then how did your younger brother manage to afford all of this?" Shiryu smiled and replied, "Hehe, it seems Shinro kept you completely in the dark." Rookie and Eri furrowed their brows as Shiryu continued, "Shinro is wealthier than me. In fact, my own success is due to him." He turned his head towards Shinro, who was reading from the script he had prepared while speaking into the microphone. Rookie and Eri listened to Shinro's speech, and Rookie couldn't help but ask Shiryu, "What do you mean?" Shiryu simply smiled and gestured for them to pay attention to Shinro's words. "In the night before today, my mind was filled with thoughts, a mix of unease and excitement," Shin said, casting a melancholic glance at the crowd that was raptly listening and gazing at him. He then turned his attention to Myra and continued, "In that moment, I thought, the most important day of my life and my fiancé's life is about to arrive tomorrow." And constantly, thoughts of how I'll fare as a married man occupied my mind. Rookie and Eri looked at Shinro with complex and conflicting emotions. Not having seen him for a year, and now, when they finally had a chance to reconnect with him, it was on the occasion of his wedding. "I grew up as a person with an irresponsible father. I used to despise him as a child, but now, in this situation, I'm filled with anxiety that I might become the same kind of person I detested the most," Shin said, his eyes glistening with moisture. A hush fell over the crowd as Shinro's past was revealed. Many employees, including Shoji and Li Han, gazed at the young man they had initially considered almost omnipotent in the world of video game development. Rookie, Eri, and Shiryu exchanged glances with one another, their expressions reflecting a mixture of emotions. Shin continued with unwavering determination, "I promised myself that I would be a good father to my future child and a loving husband to my wife. This is the commitment I made after building Kishin into the company it is today." He spoke with resolute eyes, "I will keep that promise and work towards my dream of making Kishin a globally renowned leader in the world of video games and more." The guests applauded, while Rookie and Eri watched Shin with a sense of astonishment. Shiryu chuckled beside them and remarked, "There you have it." He smiled and added, "Our youngest son has become rich and successful on his own." Rookie and Eri exchanged shocked glances. Following Shin's statement, Myra shared her thoughts, and afterward, Myra and Shin stood in front of the priest, and the ritual commenced. Finally, Shin and Myra sealed their promise with a kiss. Meanwhile, the majority of the crowd remained unaware, but the Yakuza Yamauchi-gumi Oyabun, along with many high-ranking Yakuza members, were also in attendance among the guests, silently observing the moment with a touch of melancholy. After Shin kissed Myra, the bride, the celebration continued, and Shin and Myra approached Rookie and Eri. Rookie and Eri warmly embraced him without hesitation. Eri pouted as she scolded him, "You, young man! Is this how you show your manners?" You invited me to an important party without letting me in on the fact that it was a wedding. And, even more importantly, it's your wedding. Shin smiled wryly as Myra playfully nudged him. Rookie also wore a disappointed expression and chided her brother, I can't believe it, Shin. You're the owner of Kishin, and you made a fool out of me by not telling me. Shin smiled and apologized, saying, I'm really sorry. Eri expressed her concern, why didn't you invite the whole family? Shin's smile turned somewhat wry, you know how father feels about me. He can't stand the sight of me. Eri shook her head and began, that's not entirely true, but she struggled to offer a robust defense for her husband. As they engaged in a casual conversation, one of Shin's friends approached them and exclaimed, Hey, buddy. That was a heartwarming speech. And you've truly surprised me. You're incredibly successful now. Shin simply laughed as Hideki jokingly requested some video games. They chatted at the table, and while they were conversing at the table with Myra's family, Shin's mother and sister greeted Myra's family. Suddenly, Hideki turned to Shin and asked, Bro, why didn't you invite your entire family, especially Reina? Shin was taken aback and replied, You know Reina. Everyone at the table turned their attention to Hideki, who scratched his head and nodded, saying, Yeah, I've seen her at my university. Eri furrowed her brows. Reina was her favorite child, so she inquired, Is she doing well in the university? Hideki shook his head and said, I don't know, but she actually has a boyfriend now. Eri's eyes widened as she asked, A boyfriend? Hideki nodded and continued, Yes, it's the one who used to harass Shin in the past. Harassed Shin in the past, everyone thought simultaneously. Shin thought with a steely gaze, Kenshin. The group decided not to press Hideki for more details as the party continued. Afterward, Shin and Myra bid farewell to the guests and their relatives and retreated to a room filled with the sweet scent of roses and flowers. After this chapter, I'll be focusing on manga, anime, consoles, and video game development. Of course, there will still be room for character development, and I might even delve into entertainment, Hollywood, development. Some readers might feel disappointed because his father and the entire family didn't attend the wedding, resulting in a lack of their dramatic reactions. However, rest assured that you'll witness their dramatic responses in approximately chapter 120. I won't delve into too many details to avoid spoilers. Chapter 100, The Three Legendary Mangaka. In a Tokyo home, a man with glasses was engrossed in creating his latest manga, Aril-chan. As he worked diligently, his home telephone abruptly interrupted him, prompting the man to answer with irritation, Hello, who is calling? A voice on the other end revealed, Kira-san, Kishin has extended an invitation for you to become their artist and bring their ideal manga to life. Kira's expression darkened as it became clear it was his editor on the line. Kira frowned, comprehending his editor's words but shaking his head firmly, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested. His dedication to his ongoing manga remained unwavering. His editor persisted, emphasizing the significance of the opportunity, Kira-san, you must realize that Kishin and Shonen Jump are already business partners. This is a remarkable chance. Kishin has offered a highly favorable deal, and they're one of Japan's fastest growing companies. Kira Toriyama, adjusting his glasses thoughtfully, replied, That's all well and good, but I can't abandon my current work, even for them. He was known for his steadfast determination. His editor sighed, expressing regret, It's a shame, Kira-san. Kishin has offered an 80 million yen contract. The editor hadn't even finished his sentence when Kira Toriyama hastily responded, All right, I'll accept. The editor chuckled at Kira Toriyama's change of heart and remarked, Join me at Kishin headquarters. Kira Toriyama nodded and mused, Kishin headquarters, hey. On the other end, the editor confirmed, That's right. The founder of Kishin will personally speak with you. Kira, taken aback, inquired, Really? Kishin headquarters. As April drew to a close, Shin organized the papers filled with outlines from famous manga to be published. He picked up the paper containing the story outline of Dragon Ball, intending to deliver it to Kira Toriyama. It was clear that he couldn't recreate the entire story of this famous manga, as he couldn't even recall the overall plot of the Dragon Ball series from his previous life. The most sensible approach was to hand this story outline over to the authors who would craft the manga themselves. Shin had already begun preparing for this, recognizing that bringing this iconic manga to life and establishing its global fame would be a time-consuming endeavor. Completing both Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z alone would take several years, demanding a significant investment of time. As he contemplated this, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts, and he promptly called out, "Come in." Li Han entered the room, accompanied by a few individuals. Among them was a young man in a slightly chubby frame, still dressed in his black high school uniform. Beside him was a thinner individual who was also somewhat shorter. Another man in his 20s, wearing glasses and of slender build, completed the group. The slightly thin young man marveled, "Is this really the office of Kishin's founder?" The slightly chubby young man wore a smile when he spotted Shin nearby. He gestured to the slightly thin man named Masato and commented, "I think we've found the young founder, Masato." Masato regarded Shin with admiration, and he eagerly moved closer to shake hands with him. Shin offered a wry smile and accepted the handshake. While shaking Shin's hand, Masato introduced himself enthusiastically, saying, "Hello. I'm Masato Kishimoto. It's a pleasure to meet you." He couldn't hide his excitement at shaking hands with the mastermind behind the video games he cherished. The slightly chubby young man, Ichiro Oda, who shared a similar high school uniform with Masato, introduced himself with a friendly grin, "I'm Ichiro Oda. Nice to meet you." He smiled warmly at Shin. Shin acknowledged their greetings with a smile and turned his attention to the bespectacled man who appeared older among them. Observing the scene, Kira Toriyama spoke up, "Hey, I feel a bit out of place here." All eyes turned toward Kira Toriyama upon hearing his remark. Masato and Ichiro had spent time with him in the waiting room earlier. Sensing the attention, Kira Toriyama awkwardly introduced himself, "Good morning, everyone. I'm Kira Toriyama." Masato and Ichiro were taken aback, their eyes widening as they exclaimed in unison, "You're the author of Dr. Slump and Monkey Boy." Both young men approached Kira in astonishment, not expecting to meet such a renowned author in the manga industry. As they engaged in a conversation, Shin cleared his throat, prompting everyone to turn their gaze toward him. Kira Toriyama regarded Shin with curiosity, saying, "Young man, I'm not particularly concerned about your role as the founder of Kishin, but since you invited us here, I believe it's only fair that you introduce yourself as well." He adjusted his glasses with a newfound confidence, buoyed by the recognition of the two young men. Shin offered a warm smile and addressed the group for the first time, "I'm Shinro Suzuki, the founder of Kishin. It's a pleasure to meet all of you." He smiled as he saw them nod in acknowledgement. A while later, Shin extended an invitation for them to sit, and a pot of coffee had been prepared on the table. Kira then inquired, "So? The offer mentioned that you have an ideal manga you'd like us to create. Can you share more details about it?" Masato and Ichiro also fixed their gaze on Shin, eager to learn more. Shin offered a faint smile as he picked up a stack of papers and spread them out on the wide table. Everyone watched in surprise as Shin handed specific papers to each of them. The three individuals exchanged puzzled glances as they examined the paper. Kira Toriyama held the paper in his hand, his curiosity piqued. On the page was a rough outline of the story of Dragon Ball, Kid Goku. Ichiro delved into the one-piece rough story outline, while Masato held the rough story outline of Naruto. Kira Toriyama's eyes widened as he examined the Dragon Ball story outline, and he couldn't contain his amazement. He exclaimed, "This is an incredible story." His astonishment wasn't solely due to the quality of the story but also because it resonated with him. It felt reminiscent of his previous work, Monkey Boy, which had not been successful. Masato, in a similar vein, looked at Shin and exclaimed, I had been contemplating creating a manga set in ancient Japan, featuring samurai and ninjas. The outline you provided perfectly aligns with what I had in mind. Shin smiled as he observed the reactions of the three of them. He stated, exactly. I'd like the three of you to bring to life the rough story outlines I've written. Iyakiro nodded with a touch of understanding and shared his thoughts. I have a deep appreciation for the cultures and histories of other countries. Each nation boasts a unique history, and what intrigues me is how these histories, while distinct, often share connections and similarities that beckon me to draw inspiration from them. I've been contemplating creating a manga set in a world with mixed races and diverse yet interconnected histories. He spoke while rhythmically tapping his legs in contemplation. All eyes focused on Iyakiro Oda, who stroked his chin with one hand. Shin gazed at Iyakiro with surprise, and Iyakiro continued, in fact, I was planning to start with an experimental one-shot manga before diving into the larger project I had in mind. Kira and Masato nodded in understanding, but Shin regarded Iyakiro Oda with a stunned expression, silently thinking, so, even without my influence, he would still have created One Piece. Iyakiro Oda nodded and expressed his gratitude with a smile as he remarked, this rough storyline outline has not only complemented my existing plans but has also added a new layer of passion to the manga I intend to create. You guys. I noticed that many people reacted to the paragraph with Michael Jackson playing on SES 16-bit with a group of children happily. I didn't do that on purpose. In fact, I genuinely enjoyed Michael Jackson's songs, and my nephew, who is a year older than me, also admired Michael Jackson. I have no intention of injecting dark humor into that paragraph. I'm simply unaware, guys.